फलों की शाल ओढ़
Welcome all to the international webinar on Gandhi philosophy and politics. And we are welcoming all the guests, dignitaries, and our intellectual speakers to this August occasion of Gandhi Jayanti. And we are waiting for our Vice Chancellor, sir, from Cooch Behar Pancharan Burma University, Professor Dev Kumar Mukherjee. Sir will join and we will start our international webinar. Today we have a special guest from Ganga Thapa, professor from Tribhuvan University, Nepal. And then we have a speaker, respected Professor Flavia Stara, University of Macerata, Italy. Then we have a speaker, John Hutnak, Associate Professor, Ton Duc Thang University, Vietnam. Welcome you, sir. And then we have Professor Ranjita Chakraborty, University of North Bengal, India. Then we have the speaker Christian Bartlow, President Gandhian Information Center, Germany. And then we have a speaker Dr. Ambikesh Kumar Tripathi, Assistant Professor, Mahatma Gandhi Central University, India. Please be with us. We are welcoming on behalf of Cooch Behar College and NSS Unit 2 on this occasion. Please be with us. We'll start our program. And it's an online program. We knew it very well that there may be some network problem. So be with us. And as a family, please be with us. And my dear NSS volunteer, be with us. Our respected principal, Dr. Pankaj Kumar Devnath sir, is with us. Good evening to all, to the August gathering of International Webinar of Gandhi, Philosophy and Politics. On behalf of Cooch Behar College, NSS Unit 2, we are welcoming all of you. Please be with us. We are waiting for our Vice Chancellor to come. And we have our galaxy of intellectuals today on Gandhian thought. They will speak on Gandhi and the different aspects of Gandhian thoughts. We have, today we have special guest, invitee speaker, Professor Ganga Thapa, respected professor from Tribhuvan University, Nepal. And then we have a speaker, Professor Flavia Stara, University of Macerata, Italy. today we have a galaxy of speakers, those who speak on Gandhi and their different and how Gandhi is relevant today.
Shukanto, I am here, no? Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And now we'll start our program today, the international webinar on Gandhi, philosophy and politics. Today, it's a high time to speak on Gandhi, and we have a galaxy of speakers, so that we'll start our today's international webinar. We are waiting for this webinar for long days, so that it's a time to start our webinar. Today, we have our respected Vice Chancellor, Professor Dev Kumar Mukherjee from Cooch Behar, Panchanan Burma University. Sir, the stage is yours. You are very helpful to us, always help us. Thank you, sir, on this online international webinar platform. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shukanto. This is a very special day, and virtually this is Gandhi's birthday, father of nation, and we celebrate this day every year. And today also we have celebrated in our university also. And you have chosen on a very good day and a very good topic you have chosen. And already you have invited a galaxy of experts on this topic. I'm sure this webinar will give a good concepts, a good information to all the participants, to all the teachers, all the research scholars who are interested in Gandhian philosophy. And virtually, to me, Gandhi is an unifying force in India. Very few unifying forces born in India, one or two rather can be called unifying force. I consider him as the unifying force in India. First thing is that. Second thing is that my idea and is that Gandhian philosophy and Gandhian politics. Gandhian philosophy, the concept of Gandhiji, mainly that has been derived from the Gita. That has been derived from the Gita. And from Gita, he has derived so many concepts for his philosophy as well as for his politics. I can quote from his biography one or two lines like that. Quote, early in my childhood, I had felt the need for a scripture that would serve me as an unfailing guide through the trails and temptation of life. The Vedas could not supply that need, but the Gita gave quintessence of all the Shastras and Upanishads. And it is clear from this quote that Gandhiji placed Gita above all the Shastras and Upanishads. And in Upanishad, he has seen some incompleteness. That's why he placed Gita above all. His concept non-violence, his concept non-violence that has also been derived from the idea of Gita. And here there is one interesting thing is that Gita is such a scripture on whom our great leaders have drawn their philosophy, like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, like Aravinda. So many state leaders, thinkers, and their total philosophical base was based and was drawn from Gita concept. But they were pulled apart, and Gandhiji virtually has drawn his philosophy non-violence from Gita. One can, so many persons practically ask that in Gita we see the warfare, and in the war field, Arjuna is getting all these knowledges from Bhagavan Krishna, and in the war field, the total Gita has been constructed. Still, question arises: how then the concept of non-violence, has been drawn from the Gita. And Gandhiji is very clear in this concept that he considers this warfield not as a physical warfare. He clearly said that this is not a physical warfare. And his idea of satyagraha, his idea of non-cooperation also has drawn from the concepts of Gita. However, I am not going into the deeper of this all these things, and so many experts are there. And in I like to I like to mention another quote that he mentioned the Gita is not only Bible or Quran to me, it is more than that. That is, he placed Gita more than Bible, more than Quran. That's why I'm telling that his total concept, total philosophical idea, his total philosophy as well as his political idea, and virtually to speak the truth, so far I understand, the philosophy and politics of Mahatma Gandhi is virtually, it is nothing separate. His politics has been derived from his philosophy, and his philosophy has been derived from the concept of Gita. So, a close link between Gita, his philosophy, his politics, and on the basis of Karma Jog, Jnana Jog, Bhakti Jog, all these yogas, and on the basis of these yogas, he has derived all these ideas, and this is the beauty. And however, I'm not going to extend all these things today. It's not my role to be an expert. There are so many experts, and they will tell in details about their philosophy, about their ideas, and I'm sure it will be an interesting webinar, and so many beautiful lectures, so many beautiful deliberations will be there, and all the participants, all the teachers, all the students will be participating in this auspicious day, and they will be benefited. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cooch Behar College, my dear professor, Dr. Pankaj Devnath, and Sukanto and his team, total NSS team. And again, I express my sincere thanks for choosing this beautiful topic, and also for inviting me in this very good day, in this very beautiful webinar. Thank you. Over to Sukant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. As a guardian and as a philosopher and whatever I can see, because you whatever you talk today is also give us that type of thing that we can arrange that type of webinar in future also, because it's a path, because you are the guardian, and we are also doing same for the so many days in the COVID time, and you instead of your busy schedule, sir, you are with us. That's a great thing for us, because we, whenever we have a contact with you, you extend your help, extend your support, extend your that type of your time to Cooch Behar College NSS Unit 2. Thank you, sir. We are highly benefited by your lecture, sir. Thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now I would like to welcome our respected principal, sir, Dr. Pankaj Kumar Devnath, to say something on this international webinar on Gandhi, philosophy and politics. Our respected principal, Cooch Behar College, Dr. Pankaj Kumar Devnath, sir, stage is yours.
Good afternoon to one and all. So today is a very special and important day, not only for our people of our country, but also for the entire world. The today's webinar on the topic Gandhi, philosophy and politics is being organized by NSS Unit 2, and it is going on this online platform of Google Meet. First of all, I would like to welcome and thank convey my sincere thanks to Professor Dev Kumar Mukhopadhyay, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Cooch Behar Pancharan Burma University, for his presence and a very precious deliberation on this particular day. And Professor Dev Kumar Mukherjee is always our inspiration, and he is helping our college and all the staff and students, not only of our college but also of the entire colleges of Cooch Behar Pancharan Burma University. So thank you, sir, for having with us, and you are acting as the guardian of all of us. Thank you for being with us again. And I would like to thank and welcome all the learned academicians from Italy, Vietnam, Germany, Nepal, and India who will deliver their valuable speech on this particular occasion of celebrating birthday of Gandhi, the father of nation. So I think that today's webinar will help all the participants, mostly the students, and few teachers are there, and they will benefit from the valuable speeches from all the learned resource persons. I would like to thank from my side the chief guest, Ms. Sarita Patel, who is the Regional Director of NSS Kolkata, and special guest, Professor Amal Kumar Hor, the Program Coordinator of NSS of Cooch Behar Pancharan Burma University, and also Mr. Agnimil Das, the Regional associated with NSS Regional Director of the Office as Youth Officer. And also I'd like to convey my sincere thanks to our guest of honor, Dr. Abdul Kader Safeli, for their presence here, and definitely they will speak regarding their observation of Gandhi philosophy and politics. So I think I will not take much time. Already we are late, and so many important persons are giving their valuable time. So I will not wasting any time more. So again, I will thank the learned academician, distinguished galaxy of personalities who are very authority of this Gandhian philosophy and politics, participating from Italy, Vietnam, Germany, Nepal, and India. So we are waiting for hearing these valuable speeches. So thank you again, and I would like to convey my sincere thanks to Dr. Sukanto Ghosh. He is taking all the pains to host this program so efficiently, and he has proved himself as the good organizer to organize such very important webinars. So thank you, Sukanto sir, again for your contribution to the community of not only Cooch Behar College but also on the other fields also. So again, I would like to thank all the participants also for having with us. And lastly, I would hope that this today's webinar will be a successful one. Thank you again to all of you here. So over to Sukanto.
Thank you, sir. Our respected Principal Dr. Pankaj Kumar Devnath. He is also our inspiration. Without him, I have already said so many times, without him it's not possible. And also our Vice Chancellor sir, Registrar sir, we have become family. And so that's why it's possible. So always bless us, and for your all the endeavor and whatever you speak from the heart. Thank you all the galaxies of speakers. They are waiting, but they are commenting also, like John Utnak sir, he commenting. So that's why. And now I would like to welcome our chief guest, Ms. Sarita Patel. Regional Director, RDNSS Kolkata. For his busy schedule, ma'am is not with us. She is unable to be with us, but she expresses all the best for our today's international webinar. Today we have next our special guest, speech of special guest, Professor Amol Kumar Hor, Program Coordinator, Cooch Behar Panchanan Burma University, Cooch Behar. Debayud, Amol sir is here. Amol sir achen? Amol sir is not here also, so
No, sir.
I would like. Acha, Amol sir ki eshen? Amol Hor sir, respected Program Coordinator, Cooch Behar Panchanan Burma University. Okay, then we move to our special guest. He is our inspiration, Mr. Ognimal Das, Youth Officer, RDNSS Kolkata. Please, sir, stage is yours. You are also the inspiration of this today's international webinar, Gandhi, Philosophy and Politics. Over to Mr. Ognimal Das.
Thank you very much. Before saying something, I was just recalling the thing when it was the Golden Jubilee Lecture Series 4. I was in the bus and attending your program. Now, when the journey is going to conclude by today, I am again in the bus, and now the journey will conclude, the Golden Jubilee Lecture Series. I want to express my gratitude to our respected Principal Pankaj Devnath sir, our respected Vice Chancellor sir, Dev Kumar Mukhopadhyay sir, our respected NSS Program Coordinator Amol Kumar Hor sir, and the main pillar and the convener of this program, Dr. Shukanto Ghosh sir, for arranging this type of a real essence of international flavor, what I can say, with such a number of countries that involved in a single program. It's I can understand what the journey was behind, because as I was associated with him, because it was a journey of almost 15 to 20 days to assemble all these great eminent speakers in a single platform. It's a great pleasure for Regional Directorate of NSS and the state of West Bengal to have our eminent speakers from Vietnam, from Italy, from Nepal, as well as from Germany. Thank you very much to all the eminent speakers for your valuable presence. And I am somehow very happy now. Their time has anyhow matched, not only by their valuable times, but also in the Indian standard times. So we are all in the same platform. I can say that it is something good is happening due to COVID also. And today's program is on Mahatma Gandhi. There are lots of eminent speakers are there to speak about Mahatma Gandhi. But on behalf of NSS, I will just say the 2 to 3 things that our Dr. Shukanto Ghosh sir is the Fit India Freedom Run Nodal Officer, and today we are concluding the Fit India Freedom Run. For all of you, I want to just say one thing, that it was a journey of 1.5 months, 45 days to make a habit of fitness, and the total duty of the state of West Bengal was with Dr. Shukanto Ghosh, and with his dynamic leadership, we have completed 75,000 runners. Regional Directorate of NSS, I want to congratulate for his dynamic leadership and valuable performance in Fit India Freedom Run. Thank you. And lastly, I want to say that today we are concluding the 2 years celebration of 150th year celebration by Government of India Ministry of Culture of the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. In this context, we should learn something about Mahatma Gandhi from the eminent speakers that we have the textbooks from our childhood, and we have an idea of Mahatma Gandhi even the pillar of NSS, is also our Mahatma Gandhi. So today, from the international speakers, we will have a different dynamic angle of the Mahatma Gandhi that we have never come to know in the previous times. And I hope today's program will be a huge success. And thank you very much to all the NSS team of Cooch Behar, our college. And again, I want to thank to the technical team that is supporting to Dr. Sukanta Ghosh sir, because to assemble all these things song. I will express my gratitude once again. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you. Thank you.
from
And lastly, I want to say one thing. Just as we know that today is the Swachhata activities, because as Government of India included that Swachhata activities blog run, and for the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi 2 years ago. So today it was also a part of the journey of the Fit India Nodal Officer, and we have also accumulated more than 10,000 blog runners in West Bengal also, because it is the last day of the Fit India Freedom Run. So I acknowledge the greatness of Dr. Sukanta Ghosh sir once again. Thank you very much.
thank you on behalf of Cooch Behar College NSS Unit 2 and NSS part of family to Mr. Ognimal Das for his valuable lecture. He always influences us from the beginning. Do your best. Always say that go for the program, whatever it may be, webinar or maybe any other program. Our national service team are doing great job in West Bengal. We have covered 70,000 kilometers in Fit India Freedom Run, as mentioned by our youth officer, Mr. Ognimal Das. Thank you. Please be with us. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us.
সুকান্ত আনমিউট করো। সুকান্ত প্লিজ
Yes,
আনমিউট।
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ognimal Das, for your lecture, and it will also encourage us to do better in future. Thank you, RD NSS Kolkata Regional Director Office Youth Officer, Mr. Ognimal Das. Now, I would like to welcome our special invitee guest for today's international webinar, Gandhi Philosophy and Politics, Professor Ganga Thapa from Tribhuvan University, Nepal. Before I welcoming him, I want to say that he is a professor at Central Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu, and his academic and professional achievement is so big we can't say here, because he is a great and respected professor of the world, I can say, and he is also the chairman of Political Science Association Nepal, an independent, non-partisan and not for a profit professional organization established on July 1, 1919. And Polsan, the short form of Political Science Association of Nepal, collaborated with a number of international agencies, and like Danish International Development Agency, and then United States Information Agency, Finnish Information International Development Agency, so on. He is also the executive editor of the journal Nepali Political Science and Politics from 1992 to 2000. And welcome our Professor Ganga Thapa from Tribhuvan University, Nepal. Sir, are you here? Professor Ganga Thapa, respected invitee speaker, Professor Ganga Thapa. Sir, are you here? জয় গঙ্গা স্যার এসছেন? প্রফেসর গঙ্গা থাপা স্যার জয়েন করেছেন? দেবায়ু?
হ্যাঁ স্যার জয়েন করেছে। আছে আনমিউট করা, না মিউট করা।
শোনা যাচ্ছে? Professor Ganga Thapa from Tribhuvan University, Nepal, we are welcoming you on the international webinar platform on Gandhi philosophy and politics. Please be sir. Joy asks Ganga sir to unmute himself.
Can you see me?
Yes,
No?
yes. No, sir. Only sound is coming.
No?
No.
Can you see me?
No, sir. But your voice is coming, sir.
So should I start?
Yes.
Should I start?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Honorable distinguished guest, distinguished panelist, and respected participants. First, my deep thanks to Dr. Sukanta Ghosh for all the trust and the confidence you have reposed me. I am grateful to NSS 2, Section 2, Unit 2, and the Honorable Principal Pankaj Kumar of Cooch Behar College for inviting me today. It's a special occasion, and I feel very much honored and feel humbled. We also celebrate Gandhi's birthday here in Kathmandu also, in many parts of the Nepal. So I am more or less familiar. Also, I used to participate in this auspicious day. Very interesting that that Cooch Behar College gives a kind of theoretical insights to the younger people. Similarly, NSS gives a kind of practical knowledge, skills to the younger people. And it helps them to that to better understandings and better perspectives, and at the same time overcome political and social contradictions. For me, assessing Gandhi is impossible. And in fact, words do not describe Gandhi's contribution. He's so big a personality. His contribution is diverse, very comprehensive, very powerful. That changed the world. Let me quote Einstein, who paid tribute to Gandhi by saying, and I quote, "Generation to come will scarce believe that such a one by ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth." This is the quote of Einstein. In fact, Gandhi's approach to non-violent approach to the political change is immense, and not only the non-violent approach to not only has to gain India independence from British rule, but it also provided a blueprint for social movements, and he remains considered one of the revered figure in modern history. Social movements, we know all, begins where revolution ended, and that gives the state to institutionalize polity, and more importantly, civil rights and the rule of law. In my view, Gandhi was not a political philosopher, or he was not a system builder, not even committed to any exclusively school of thought. But many political scientists consider him, he was the man of millennium, combined prophet and politicians of the highest caliber. To my view, Gandhi successfully applied Lord Buddha's philosophy of ahimsa in countless ways, and I do not hesitate to consider him. He is the reincarnation of Buddha, the Gandhiji. You know that his contribution, it is a very, very, very rational, way to bring changes, social, both in economic and other kind of changes. Let me just refer the first quarter of the 20th century. The world was moving toward different directions. Military power was dominant. In persons like Woodrow Wilson, Churchill, Stalin, Hitler, and many others, they were dominating the world politics. I'm talking about the first half of the 20th century. At a time, Gandhi was talking about non-violence means to political change. Nobody was believing at that time. And even the many Indian politicians also was not believing that through the non-violent means there will be, that change in politics. Means that, that it is very difficult to get independence, gain independence, and this kind of things. But he was a man with iron will, determined and dedicated man. He convinced to all the society peoples, to all the leaders, that this is the only way to protect the humanity. So he continued his efforts, and finally India became independent. Means that that it was not only independent, that he liberated almost 500 million populations. They got emancipated. This is the biggest achievement, and no one was believing at the time. So still, that it will be the best tribute to Gandhi if we follow his path of non-violence and truth. If we do not follow the non-violent path and truth, means that celebrating Gandhi birthday every year make not, no sense sometimes. Let us follow. Every politicians, they should have to follow his path of non-violence and truth. Because there is a kind of the leadership quality is degrading everywhere in the world, and they talked much about these things, but they do not apply. They are very much eager to control the society. So the only and best truth, tribute to Gandhi will be to follow his non-violent path and truth. This I want to say that. So as I just told that that I'm not a person to evaluate or judge Gandhi's diverse contributions, but he was a very innovative man. He was a religious man, but he wanted to religious harmony. He wanted the kind of equal society. He was talking about the brotherhood. He was talking about the unity. He was talking about the that nationalisms, which I think Honorable Vice Chancellor also mentioned in his speech. That these are the things. This brings the society together, people together, community together. And he also very much very much that clear about education. He was talking about physical education, mental education and moral educations. We know well, that the developed societies, that there are some problems of this social disorder because of the, that a kind of independency. I'm not talking about that there should be a hierarchy in the family, but there must be a kind of social order in the family between the parents and sons and children, between husband and wife, between brother and sister, this kind of things. These are, things now society is more splitting in different ways, that. So, that he also was very much, that very, very clear about the role of the, that education to bring the society together, unite together, this kind of things. He was also talking about the self-rule. Self-rule not only in the center, but also village levels, that is the grassroots levels, panchayats you are talking about. He wanted the people of the grassroots community participate in the decision-making process, that participate in their policy-making process, decision-making process. He wanted to have a strong and very independent type of local governments so that people of the grassroots can be benefited much, this kind of things. So he was also talking the self-reliance economy. Of course, that due to the globalization, we cannot, prevent this kind of impact, liberalization. We cannot escape the fact. But at the same time, if we want to prosper, there must be a kind of self-reliance economy. So he also introduced a kind of charkha and other type of things. So it is also very fundamental at that time. That my point is that, that we should not evaluate Gandhi in today's context. We should evaluate Gandhi in the 70, 80 years and 100 years ago. That Gandhi was, the fighting for the liberation from the very beginning, maybe at the end of 18th century, something like that. So we must evaluate Gandhi in that way, that whatever he did in that context, I think it was that valid, it was pragmatic, it was that purposeful, that. Some of the people, they write that if he did that, he did not that, this kind of things. I'm not in such a things. So we should evaluate Gandhi's contribution. Basically, that. Of course, everybody, they have some contribution, but Gandhi was a tallest figure of the 20th century. That in every, that aspect, of the things, that. He did not untrust anything. So it is everything of the society. So we should, that very seriously, that should follow some of the, that innovative ideas, that making contextual in the today's context. And this is the best remembrance to Gandhi. So I am just talking about that, that. So he already talked about equality. Now even the society is becoming more unequal. If the society is unequal, there will be a kind of discontent. There will be a kind of disorder. So we should have to build a society that is, that where every people, they can participate, where every people, they can contribute in their systems. So that the very, that we should have a political system owned by every members of the family. These are the motives, these are the objectives of the Gandhi. That, of course, it is due to some fanatic people, some kind of things, that India could not remain united. It was separated, Pakistan and something like that. It happened. It was unfortunate, but that, that you wanted a strong, united, and that more democratic societies. That democratic society contributing, benefiting to every individuals. That democracy means benefiting to everybody, not particular kind of peoples. Not only that, there should be no class of peoples. That in terms of it, everybody should have to own their political system, own their society, own their policies. That. So that it is a very, very, very worthful. If the political leaders of today, they very much focus on their that work, that based on the Gandhi's philosophy and principles, and which is based on rationalism, which is based on that which prevent that society, that society together. so that we should have to follow. But that we should not bring the people confrontations. That this is the basically the political leaders. They are not very much accountable, very much responsible in all over the world. I have told you that that everywhere in the world, not only in the third world society, that they have, even in the first world society also, they are not becoming much more accountable to the political system, accountable to the people. They say one thing, say they do different things when they come in the power. So there must be honesty. There must be a kind of that integrity that they should have to demonstrate this kind of things. And that I don't think non-violent techniques. That I always believe that political problem, military cannot be the solution of the political problems. This is my point. That military cannot to pacify some 1 year or 2 years, maybe 3, 4, 5 years. Not it cannot that pacify the people discontent, people desperation, people saying that the grievances. It cannot be. There must be that non-violent path, and it's a dialogue, the kind of peace. The peace should be established to bring the society more contributing, to bring the society more accountable, to see the people more participating. So there must be a participation in every levels of the government, directly by the people, and they should be given proper education. It is very important that NSS, and I find that that going through the this website, that you are focusing on basic education based on the ground realities, based on the culture. This is very fundamental. Right now, that then you can only have citizens which is responsible and loyal to the country, loyal to the system. This should be established. And so let me say that when I'm not a academic, that I became I'm an academic by accident. That to be very frank, I also keep very little knowledge about the Gandhi, but I was so inspired by his that thoughts. These were I'm a peaceful person, because that in Nepal also we went through the different phases of political movements and sometimes violent movements. Recently also we had emerged violent for almost one decade. But basically Nepal followed the Gandhian principles. So Gandhi is not limited to not only to India, because many countries of the world, they followed the Gandhi's that non-violent path of non-violence, Gandhi's path of truth, because that still the that it is the that politician who guide us. They should have to follow properly the Gandhian path, at least in India, in our society. So that that Gandhi, Gandhi's contribution is multidimensional. I do not want to repeat it. Multidimensional, and you can have a detailed analysis, through the text and through the different kind of angles you can see. Now, this is not the proper place to elaborate here. But the way he, that changed the society, that. And that we have succeeded to overthrow the British oppressors, and it was very, very important. It was not imagined by that any political leaders of that time, as I told, and I repeat that these Hitlers and that Stalin, that Churchill, that Roosevelt and Wilson's, that they were the big leaders of the 20th century, there is no doubt, but they still opted the military solutions. The Gandhi, that shifted their, that thinking. Gandhi was never convinced with these leaders, and he continued, that his movements and through the non-violent means, in that, that it is a very, very, these things cannot be explained by words, and it was very instrumental society, and it should be followed by many societies. Still, that there are several places, there are several confrontations in terms of territory, in terms of other kind of cultures. There is a divide, cultural divide, social divide, even in the first world countries like America, and that in Britain, in Germany, this kind of social divide. And this cannot be contained through multi way. That the only thing that these are the things that can be tackled through the non-violence means peaceful way, through dialogue, debate, discussion, in kinds of devotions, this kind of things. So that whether that Gandhi followed the that Gita's concept, that this non-violence, or whether it was the the Buddha's principle of non-violence, let us not debate it, right? But I still respect, and I think he is the person who that very honestly, wholeheartedly, and very that very seriously that, and applied the non-violence philosophy of non-violence, and that's in the world, and his ideas is still very valid, very important to all of our societies, and I very much privileged privileged to participate in these webinars. And once again, I thank very much to Sukanta Ghosh and the principal Pankaj Kumar and yours, other members of the team. So I pay that due respect to Gandhi, and I convince myself that I follow his guidance, his principles. That is the path of non-violence and truth. I am a man, always speak the truth, and also I am a non-violent man. Let us follow the Gandhi's these two ideas, path of non-violence and truth, very honestly, not in the words but in practice. Let us encourage our young people. I think NSS can do that, encourage people to give through the proper education, because they are the future of India. They are the future of Nepal young people. Also, that let us that expand Gandhi's political thoughts to around the world, and so that there will be a kind of orderly social, there will be orderly social aspect. So there will be no social divide. Let us encourage, particularly, let us not teach to the older people, maybe that they cannot be changed because of their long association with some in some things. Let us elaborate, and I very much really appreciate NSS, and that it can that give impart, it can that assist, it can train, that not fundamentally, but that rationally, to give this younger generation people. They are the builders of the country. They can make the changes in the country. They can have that they can be the responsible citizen of the country. Let us make our society, let us make our people more accountable, more participatory, more more responsible. That right now that I have seen when I go outside that many younger people, they are not very responsible. It seems like that. They take things granted, something like that. Let us make them more responsible, more serious, to the nations, to their community, to their families, so that family is a very must. That I'm going to in that a kind of socialize this NSS and other our education institutions. We should give them proper education so that they can properly socialize, and so that they can develop a positive thinkings, that contributing to the positive things to those and that kind of things. Again, thank you very much for your kind invitations. I very much that grateful to you, and I'm not a the persons who studied about Gandhi, but I did my PhD from India, and I also went to go to Malavia Center in Banaras Hindu University. In I keep some knowledge, but that I very much the follower of Gandhi in Nepal also, because I am a non-violent person. So this is the biggest weapon to overcome that anarchism, to overcome any authoritarian roles, and permanently. If you that have a peace through military conquest, it will be temporary. It will go 4 or 5 years, maybe 10 years, 20 years, maybe, and things will revive. But if you overcome the the anarchism and terrorism, anarchy, any kind of through the peaceful means, it will be permanent. It will be that stable for a long time, and so that we should not forget the Gandhi's two vital things, truth and that non-violence. These are the most important things. So that we should not talk about the war. We should not buy that jet planes and everything that just to kill the people. That we should invest the money, this kind of military money, to to impart good education, let us establish good academic institution, educational institution, and let us provide them a good curriculum, good content, so that the citizens of the country, they competitive, they can compete the citizens of other students of other intellectuals all over the world. So that let us have a proper education. Let us not invest money to other things. And education is the key. So that we should have to give a proper education. Since I am a political science professor for several years, maybe almost 4 decades, that I always emphasize that education is the key, and education can change their their thinking, can bring that the people that more contributory, more that accountable, more responsible to the society. And with these words, I thank you, sir, for your kind invitation again, and I would be very much interested to learn, to listen to other speakers. And I'm with these words, I thank you again for the invitations and everything. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Ganga Thapa from Tribhuvan University, respected professor from Nepal. And sir has touched all the point. He said that Gandhi is not only for India, Gandhi is for all. And he already talked about the NSS, how NSS activity are influence the younger generation, how to develop our community service, so that now the time and as per the participants are concerned, please be with us. We are starting our program to be passionately listening to the galaxies of intellectuals. Then we'll definitely provide the feedback form. And now I would like to welcome Senior Professor Flavia Stara from the University of Macerata, Italy. And before I'm inviting her, I want to say Flavia Stara is a full professor in philosophy of education and human research in tourism at the University of Macerata, Italy. Her education both in Italy and USA, Howard University, concentrated on history of philosophy, education, comparative studies in literature and culture. And her present research focuses on how educational cultural processes are challenged in contemporary Western and Eastern realities by socio-economic and ethical transformation. Furthermore, she works on interdisciplinary research field related to human rights, art education, human resource management. On her research areas, she authored a number of books and articles both in Italian and English. She is engaged in international multidisciplinary research projects to investigate issues related to human cultural growth in Europe, India, Brazil, Ethiopia, Kenya. Welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of Cooch Behar College, NSS Unit 2. Professor Flavia Stara, it's time to...
Okay, I'm here. Namaskar to everybody. Hope you can hear me. I don't know if always this connection is going, or if it will go well. It's not easy really in these days to be on these platforms. Really, thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh, Dr. Sukanta Ghosh, for inviting me to this international seminar. And of course, my thanks to all the people, dignitaries, authorities from your college, and all the special guests invited in this seminar. Once again, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to meet you all, although in a virtual form, but for the moment we have to be happy with this. Of course, I miss India. I miss my traveling to India. As you said in my presentation, I've been associated with different research projects that brought me to your country several times. I've been associated with University of Kashmir, then Delhi University, and then in Madras, and other locations, of course. So I traveled all over the country, and I have some good friends and colleagues all over, and I'm very happy that I can include in the number of colleagues and friends also you and the rest of people here that I see. as you said, I am a student in philosophy and I do teach philosophy of education. So mostly my reflection on Gandhi that I will contribute to this seminar will be related to my research field and my main field of work, which is philosophy of education. But before I say something related to education, I would like to say that in my country, in Italy, there has been always a strong legacy with the figure of Mahatma Gandhi, especially in the last decades, when many political movements aiming at the emancipation of people in different ways, in different modalities, and so the also obtaining of human rights in terms of freedom, in terms of some juridical regulations that were important for the sustainability of our democracy. Some of these politicians, I would say, they were definitely inspired by Gandhi, by the Ahimsa and this non-violent way of fighting and having the capacity of struggling and obtaining, as I said, some results that at the political and social level became extremely relevant. In political terms, I would like also to say that the Mahatma Gandhi is associated with a specific time in our history, in the history of Italian independence, and to the specific movement of what we call in Italian risorgimento, resurgence. We can also translate it like a political renaissance, if we like, which was led by Giuseppe Mazzini. And Gandhi, when he lived in Europe during his staying in Europe and studying, and he had connections with the thought of Giuseppe Mazzini, and Gandhi himself, Gandhiji, was inspired by the ideals expressed by Mazzini, who drove this renaissance of Italy, who actually concluded in the independence of the country and the creation of a unitary state in 1860. When Gandhi created the journal Young India, this was a very clear homage, reference to the party created by Mazzini, which was the Young Italy. And what struck mostly Gandhi in reference to the character of Giuseppe Mazzini was the fact that Mazzini moved the center of gravity in the political struggle from the rights to the duties of human beings. So this was a radical change in comparison to what can we call the tradition coming from Enlightenment, because individual rights that we have to conquer, they are no more meant as the goal that we have to reach, as in the French Revolution, but they become a tool. They become the only tool to achieve progress. So the progress of humanity is the center of Mazzini theory, and it's a kind of work in continuous becoming, is a continuous work in progress in which everyone has to contribute. And so this was something that interested very much Gandhi when, of course, he went back to India and he started to think and work on the liberation of India from colonialism and, of course, the famous and important struggle for the independence of the country. And also there is something else that he was fascinated by the figure of Mazzini, is this, a way, is a spiritual attitude which was linked in a way to non-violent principles, and we know well how much Gandhi Gandhi was influenced by Tolstoy, the Russian writer Leo Tolstoy, from whom he definitely derived this concept of non-violence. And this was also, I would say, a feature in the thought expressed by Mazzini. So therefore, for this reason, Gandhi has been in my culture, in my country, and especially, I would say, from the 60s on, when, of course, the 60s do represent in Europe an important, really an important period, an important segment in the history of emancipation, of evolution, of social changes, of educational changes. And from the 60s on, there have been some political leaders definitely inspired by Gandhi in Italy, located, I would say, in the left parties, but it's not important really their political collocation, because they are mostly considered independent thinkers, intellectuals, who were the leaders of very important movement that really changed a lot of the conditions in this country in order, of course, as you know, we are a secularized country, so many things have been deconstructed in Europe and in Italy as well, although this is basically a Catholic country, but it's a secularized country in cultural terms. So many issues have been deconstructed and reconstructed, and in order to achieve some levels of freedom, some levels of growth, social growth, definitely there have been many times the occurrence of ahimsa and non-violent way of struggling in order to obtain specific results. Of course, I think that when we think about non-violence in Gandhi, and yes, I do share what some of the eminent speakers said in the beginning, that it all comes from the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, and this concept of dharma, the duty, but this ahimsa is a very active non-violence. This is why it has been always welcomed in this part of the world, because it's some kind of action, strong action. So it's not meant for weak people. It's meant for strong people, because with the weak it might seem mostly hypocrisy, and I think that Gandhiji himself expressed this very well many times, when he underlined the fact that when there is a choice between cowardice and violence, maybe Gandhiji would advise violence, but violence for self-defense and for the defense of the people that are humble, simple, and in need, somebody to stand for them. So this concept of ahimsa, then I will move to education, but the things are absolutely strictly connected. I think nowadays can be seen also as a possible solution for trying to comply with all the needs, with all the demands that come from the new world order, and especially in this part of the world where now we are exposed to the complexity of society in terms of multiculturalism, interreligious dialogue, interculturality, hyperculturalism, and it is very difficult, to cope and to create a medium of dialogue. Most of the times, we know also from eminent studies that different cultures clash, violently clash. So it seems that there is no way for achieving a possible time and space of dialogue or mediation. Definitely, going back and rethink and deeply rethink the value of ahimsa is a possibility, and also to exercise, to expose ourselves, to challenge ourselves with this kind of exercise. It's one of the possible paths that we can use to create, as I say, a space of mediation, this in between that sometimes seems to be so difficult to merge between differences, between the different concepts that are not only given by the fact that there are ethnic diversity now in Europe, but there are diversities at various levels, intergenerational diversity, gender diversity. So it's a continuous quest for comprehension. It's a continuous quest for freedom and giving space to understanding. And then from this kind of background, of course, we can move easily to education, because what Gandhi underlined in his philosophical thought and also in his interest for education is this sense of responsibility. So the responsibility of the individual for the society, the responsibility of individual for the reality in which he is placed, in which he is living. There is some disturbances. I don't know if it depends for me or somebody else. Hello?
Please unmute the others. It's an honest request to the participants. Please unmute yourself. Sorry, ma'am.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I understand, this is the little incidents on platforms. What I like to underline is that definitely we are in debt, we educators, people that works on education, people that works on theory of education, we are in debt to Gandhiji for mostly for one important aspect, which is the there is still some disturbances. I don't know if people can unmute the microphone, otherwise it will be very difficult.
Joy, please unmute Ganga sir and others also. Please unmute করে দাও. I'm sorry for this disturbances, but what to do, ma'am?
Don't worry about. We maybe we wait a few seconds before. Okay, it seems to be quiet. So I was saying we are definitely in debt as people that work on education and reflect on education, as philosopher of education, that by studying and reflecting upon Gandhi's theories, we definitely discovered that he offered an answer to the indispensable necessity to correct educational processes from what can be considered a fundamental vice, which is the disjunction of practice from theory and morality. Really Gandhi underlines the importance of education as a political factor. And when I say political, I use this adjective term in the, I would say, most noble way, making reference to the Greek etymology of polis, which is the society, which is the community. So definitely education has a political value, and this is expressed in Gandhi's thought when, as I said, he underlines the importance of giving to education a practical character. Practical character means not only the fact that he might have introduced in the education the possibility of having laboratories, of working really, of using hands, but really stressing on the factor of responsibility, which is nowadays extremely important. Gandhi has been a forerunner of the coexistence and osmosis, I would say, of differences. And so what we need today is definitely a community of people that is educated, that is ready, that has the tools to manage intercultural traits, to manage complexity. When we think of about this element of dharma, duty, responsibility. Well, this is the main characteristic of the profile of a non-violent teacher, who is totally dedicated, and his life is totally consistent with his professionality. So Mahatma Gandhi always wanted teachers who embody the qualities they sought to bring forth. And as I said in other circumstances, in webinars that are celebrating Gandhi, which I was invited also, among the people among educators in Italy, definitely have a strong connection with Gandhian thought, or what we can define the traces of actualizations of Gandhi's thought. There is the work of Maria Montessori. Maria Montessori is quite famous in India also because she was in India. She lived in India for 7 years, trying to not only to understand the Eastern societies, but also to establish educational schools, methods, methodologies, didactic in your country, and there are still many schools named after her. But she met Gandhi, and she was extremely inspired by Gandhi, along with also other Italian great thinkers. If there is a few minutes, then I might mention. But Maria Montessori developed an interdisciplinary approach called cosmic education that echoes many of Gandhi's teaching. Montessori felt that the students learn to understand their duty or the cosmic task as human beings and citizens through participating in this cosmic education. Montessori, as Gandhi, believed that individuals have the responsibility to learn about the world and the universe, understand the interconnectedness of life, and then non-violently take action against injustice when it is necessary. And of course, this kind of work can be done effectively only after an individual has learned self-control and has gained a kind of personal freedom. Montessori's cosmic educations and Gandhi's philosophy definitely have in common the fact that some traits, which are the personal freedom to accepting responsibility, the interdependence of life, this concept of responsibility or duty or dharma to take non-violent action against injustice. Their connection was quite deep. They met a few times. I would like to read to you just a quote from Montessori's books and notes, in which she expresses her emotions and feelings and impressions about the Mahatma Gandhi. She says in one short passage, Gandhi appears to me as a soul rather than as a man. He had been in my thoughts for years and years. I have followed him with my soul. His gentleness, his sweetness was such that it was as if in the whole world there existed no such thing as harshness. He gave himself freely and fully, and if no limits or obstacles existed, strong, direct, as a ray of sunshine. It seemed to me that this venerable being might greatly aid the teachers whom I am preparing. The teacher should be open-hearted and generous, should change his or her own soul, that she may come forth from the harsh world of the adults, that world full of obstacles, thwarting the life of humanity. May his meeting with our teachers aid us in the spiritual defense of the child in humanity. And of course, Montessori and Gandhi strongly believed that to have real peace, we must begin with the children. The lesson of Montessori, attentive and caring for the interior life of the child, definitely still offers in Italy and elsewhere abroad with their methodologies to the new generations practices of authentic religiousness, answering to a current need for the dimensions of the sacred, more and more diffused in times of globalization. And of course, starting from the suggestions of Dr. Montessori and Mahatma Gandhi, the contemporary educational processes may launch again the childhood as a new resource for the adult and engage and commit themselves from transforming every place of education into a laboratory of peace and for authentic democracy. And I really believe that for what I now for what I received, from the thought of Gandhi, and if I think to share it also with the young generation in our educational context in university, I think that what can be really the message is this active non-violence, as I said before, this capacity of being there, of taking action in some part that, of course, we recognize as difficult. We know that globalization, consumerism is completely changing the world. Society is becoming, of course, now we are very much thankful today to the technology for this meeting, but we are becoming a contactless society. We are losing the capacity of human relation, of empathy, of really looking at each other or looking at the face of the other. And this is a space that we have to recover. And Gandhi can be once again in the history of humanity as the lighthouse, the reference point to whom we all who are in challenge in this kind of research professions, part of thinking, we can really, being comforted and inspired more and more. I really see in the space and in the in the space of his words the richness of a message that is still there. Of course, Gandhi's message overcomes boundaries, times, history, religion, and whatever. But then, in order to be effective, you have to realize, you have to understand what is the scope of the message expressed by an intellectual, because Gandhi is not just a spiritual figure, he's an intellectual, he's a politician, he's an activist, he's many figures all together, all combined. And the scope of his message is still really vast. And really, we can go back, and I do encourage, I already do it in my class in university, and I will do more and more, to read at least, part of his works, part of his memories, of his writings. And I had already a few students that decided to write dissertations, working, making comparisons between Gandhiji and Dr. Montessori. But I'm sure that there will be more people among the young generation who are really in search, that's what I see in my country, really in search for ideals, really in search for some kind of beauty and strength. And definitely, from this message of truth, love, ahimsa, satyagraha, all together, this can be expressed. So definitely it deserves to be studied and to be deepened, more and more. And I'm really thankful for this invitation once again, for having, the possibility of sharing some of my ideas and my thought with you all. It was extremely nice. Thank you for listening. Thank you again.
Thank you, Professor Flavia Schatter from University of Macerata, Italy, for not only that type of delightful lecture. We are very much benefited by your lecture, ma'am. And we are thankful to, on behalf of Cooch Behar College, NSS Unit 2, and on from the India also, because as far as your comparison with Dr. Montessori, you have wonderfully give us the instances where the Montessori can compare with Gandhi and how their thoughts are related, how the education system in Italy, how the education system in India, so that we are highly benefited. There are already in our chat box, there is a conflict of opinion and the argument, counter argument, but we are running out of time. We are very thankful to you, ma'am, because it's a delightful lecture. Namaste, ma'am. Thank you. Now I would like to welcome, we are waiting for John Hutnak, the University of Ton Dac Thang University, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and author of Global South Asia on Screen 2018, Bomeshwari Akhar, and Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities. Before I welcome him, actually, we have a lot of conversation about this international webinar before that with John sir. And John sir always asks me, so be focused and we will be there, no problem. And before I welcome him, I want to say something about him. John Hutnak writes on culture, cites diaspora, history, film, prisons, colonialism, education, Marxism. He has studied and taught in Australia at Deakin and Melbourne universities, and in the UK Manchester University Institute for Creative and Cultural Research. Before moving to Goldsmith in 1998 and becoming academic director of the Center for Cultural Studies in 2004 to 2014. He has held visiting researcher posts in Germany at the South Asia Institute and Institute for University Germany, Sociology at Mimar Sinan University, Istanbul, Turkey, and the Graduate Institute of Social Research and Cultural Studies. National Chaotang University, Taiwan, a former adjunct professor of RMJIT University, Melbourne. He is currently Associate Professor, Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, Ton Dang Thang University, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Welcome on behalf of Cooch Behar College, NSS Unit 2, John Hutnak sir. Please be with us. We are thankful you are already interacted with the people in this webinar platform. Thank you, sir. Thank you. John Hutnak, sir, are you here?
I am. Can you hear me? I'm presenting something for you, I hope, if you can see that. We have a presentation on this, for this topic. It's just so I can keep track of what I'm saying and doing, right? I gave a title to my talk because I want to write this up one day, eventually. And the title is The Rumor of Ideological Opposition, Marx and Gandhi, and Writing Reading. And writing reading I want as kind of one word in the end, but let's see how we go. Okay? All okay? We are at 1941. So, I'm starting with a quote from Acharya Vinod Bhave. He says, whatever interest the world may or may not take in the comparative study of Gandhi and Marx, in our own country, he means India, at least, it has become the subject of everyday discussion among the educated. Every discourser attempts to weigh Gandhi and Marx and measure them up accordingly to his capacity. Okay, we often think that there have been too many wild comparisons and mild contrasts between Mahatma Gandhi and Karl Marx, and any effort to even attempt to summarize their positions in terms of what would allow an overall evaluation is fraught. And anyway, the applicability of such big generalizations is hardly decisive. Let me say, however, that, and this, I thank you for this opportunity, it's a great honor to be asked to speak on this today. I have a plan for the talk. I will take up some categories. I hope I manage to take them all up, but we might run out of time. Modern industry, dialectics, revolutionary violence, women, technology, class oppression, religion, of course, opium. I'm not sure so much I'll get into this, but fascism and reading. Any assessment of debates then, from the perspective of now, is conditioned by the point of observation. The stakes of this field are high and fraught, as I said, so many texts are there. It seems an impossible task. I mean, I am just thinking aside that I should actually take a note from Flavia's fantastic presentation and talk about where I am in Gandhi. So that would be Vietnam. I've just received this volume of texts on Ho Chi Minh with India, and translated half of it, and it's some 1,011 pages. I'm not going to be able to do this at this time. It's short notice, but I promise that for the future. For now, I'm reading the letters and prefaces and the other writings, the peripheral apocrypha of the Marxian text, notebooks, especially those published more recently by the Mega, and the collective works of Mahatma Gandhi, and the diary and diaries, the autobiography, and other texts that I can access. This has been my project for today. The diaries and the letters, you know, this paper will emphasize the importance of a diary, the fecundity of a diary for introspection. And the letters, Marx especially, but also Gandhi, that can share almost anything. A letter is not like email today really, but a more personal text without censure. Well, yes, of course, with censure, censored in oneself and edited in practice, where you set out draft ideas, I suppose, at least in Marx's case, in his letters, draft ideas, writing to Fred Engels, right? Draft ideas as they're first formed. And so when we read letters, we see preliminary sketches of what will eventually be an idea published. And in diaries as well, especially the diaries of Mahatma Gandhi, we also see more or less, these are written usually without, and sometimes with the intention to publish, but not always, this same kind of preliminary sketching. Now, drafts, the good thing about a draft is it's not yet scripture. Yeah, there's no need to invoke liturgy or hermeneutical excess. Well, perhaps maybe I am excessive in my focus on the processes of it. Editing, selecting, translating, excerpting, and erasing passages and paragraphs. Okay, we should, of course, want to avoid any stereotype grand theory version of Marx, and I'm not trying to oppose some other unformed, messy Marx instead, but be aware of that, and also be aware that Gandhi too is subject to some kind of caricature and stereotype in so many misrepresentations, perhaps from Tagore, certainly by Attenborough in films and so on. Now, the diaries of this and letters of these two men both want to change the world, not just interpret it. Both had an increasing and evident sense of mission. Both raised the specter of the mass power of the oppressed, the imperative of collective endeavor, for a politics of self-determination, unalienated life, a future untrammeled by the evils of capitalist exploitation. Gandhi and Marx are the names for a desire for freedom, and both work it out in their own textual ways. And what we have, these men are dead, what we have is text. Gandhi kept a diary throughout most of his adult life, actually, at least since his first trip to London. The first volume of the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi, after 3 small notes, a confession, a short graduation speech, and a letter to his mother. The first substantial text is his London diary. And Gandhi had advised his followers to keep a diary. The idea was that this would be a mirror for their own mind, recording their dreams, the good and bad, putting down these untrammeled, as I said, thoughts. For him, a later comment, actually, prospective Satyagrahi is expected to keep a logbook or diary in which he will daily enter, he or she, I'm sure, will daily enter the work done during the course of the day, and the logbook shall be submitted to me, Gandhi said. He was really interested in this inner thought process. So Gandhi's own publication is his diaries, is her innermost diary and thoughts for public reading. For him, I think we think that politics is not based upon a public-private division. And writing diary and why it's recommended for the followers is a form of consciousness raising, of self-examination. The effort to increase and emphasize forms of conscious self-activity that would be a greater contribution to democratic participation than any vote block, tick box, democracy, vote on this stamp, patronage, corruption. This is a kind of first step, consciousness raising for a radical democracy. In the autobiography, Gandhi wrote of diary writing that the exercise has given him, ineffable mental peace, because it has been his fond hope that it might bring faith and trust in ahisma to waverers. Writing as a kind of meditation. Now, Gandhi has been criticized, for example, by Bipin Chandra. While Gandhi brought the masses into the political movement, he never encouraged or permitted the masses to discuss and develop political activity on their own, leave alone encourage them to have their own leadership. We should assess this, but I want to say that consciousness raising and calling on people to write diary is a step in bringing the masses into organized political activity. Gandhi here is an advocate not just for literacy, but for reflective, contemplative self-examination. And this was fundamental. Now, Marx, my other comparative figure, this is a bit arbitrary, right? While it's an honor to speak today, as a candidate, you've accorded me a great honor. It's difficult and somewhat arbitrary to make this connection, but the link, I think, is there despite the gap of years. And I want to say the first link for me that I thought was that Marx, he kept no diary, but he did keep an almost daily correspondence with Friedrich Engels over nearly 50 years. This is like an archive of the second half of the 19th century. We can see him working through his ideas for publication, preliminary ideas, drafts, thoughts, and commentaries on so much of the material of the day. The letters have so many significant points. We can also select a few. For example, the often quoted letter to Arnold Rouge, in which Marx asserts the task of the communists is to be first a ruthless criticism of all that exists, die rücklose Kritik alles Bestehenden. Ruthless both in the sense of not being afraid of the results it achieves, it arrives at, and in the sense of being just as little afraid of conflict with the powers that be. And Marx said this quite early in 1944. Another, at the other end of his life, excerpt from his writings and drafted in a letter to the Russian newspaper. I can't even pronounce its name, Oteshenskaya Zapinsky, where Marx had taught himself Russian, right? And he wanted to read the texts of the workers' movement in Russia. But he wrote to try and correct some sense in which maybe he was being turned into some edifice, some unchanging figure. And that he didn't want that journal, the writers in that journal, to take capital as something more solid than it was. He said, don't metamorphise my historical sketch of the genesis of capitalism in Western Europe into a historical philosophical theory of the general path imposed by fate upon every people, whatever the historic circumstances. So very carefully, Marx was setting out already a critique of orthodox Marxism. Famously, he said he would not be a Marxist. The historical sketch only shows the process in Europe and describes the historic movement which, by divorcing the producers from their means of production, converts them into wage earners, proletarians. Okay, now we all know the phrases, proletarians of the world unite and so on, but here there's something very important that is akin to something I think that we can find in Mahatma Ji and Gandhi. Another moment from the letters of Marx, though, in the second last year of his life, he travels to Africa. First time out of Europe. He goes to Algeria and he signs off a letter to his daughter Laura with an Orientalist parable. I've not yet traced this story, but someone might recognize and know it in this version. And I'm sure that this would have got a laugh from Gandhi. So a ferryman is ready and waiting with his small boat on the tempestuous waters of a river, and a philosopher wishing to get to the other side climbs aboard. This is what they do, philosophers. There ensues the following dialogue. Philosopher, do you know anything of history, ferryman? Ferryman, no. Philosopher, then you've wasted half your life. And again, the philosopher. Have you studied mathematics? The ferryman, no. The philosopher, then you've wasted more than half your life. Two halves, one whole. Hardly were these words out of the philosopher's mouth when the wind capsized the boat, precipitating both ferryman and philosopher into the water. Whereupon the ferryman shouts, can you swim? The philosopher, no. The ferryman, then you've wasted your whole life. This was Marx to Laura Lafarge, his daughter, on the 13th of April, 1882. This is a year before he dies. Marx's wife is dead. His main correspondent besides Engels. And he is in Africa looking for better weather, but still alert and searching for, interested in all the same old issues. And Gandhi and Marx both instinctively appeal to the same idea in their critical thought, the concept of an unalienated life. I take this from Bill Rami. Like Gandhi, Marx stressed, one, the objectification of the relations between nature and human beings, such that nature was not seen any longer as prompting their practical and moral engagement, living in, but rather seen as the object of their detached and extractive gaze, mastery and control. 2, the objectification of relations between human beings themselves. Now, this struck me as something that we can see also in Gandhi. I find a quote for this point: Gandhi seeks to shape an Indianized version of non-violent socialism, consistent with what is claimed to be Marx's basic principle of communism, to each according to his need, from each according to his capacity. Of course, we can discuss where concepts come from. I'm not, while the scholarship of tracking down quotations and citations and ideas, I think is worthwhile and important, it's not the whole of the story. To say non-violence comes from Gita or Tolstoy or Fabians or what have you. All of the above. Synthesis and exchange. This is the way in which relations between human beings can also be retrieved and seen in texts. I mean, we have only the textual record of these men, of these. Of course, we have also images. You'll see, actually, dialectic is in play. I'm putting in the images on the slides some stamps from all over the world of Gandhiji and of Marxji. But I'm not trying to Indianize Marx. That's for people in Bengal to have been doing for a long, long time. I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs. But the point is to learn something from Gandhi so as to renew and reclaim scholarship and understanding of Marx, and vice versa. Both have been buried under an avalanche of commentary and even hagiography. And I think we have a lot to learn from and a lot of pleasure to gain from reading what they said. Marx, the most influential social scientist there ever was, right? That's not often said enough, but there's no question of this. And the thing is, he did not remain constant or stuck in earlier positions or analysis. This is a lesson I learned from Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak. She often has said something like this, and we talked about it. So the model here is something like experiments with truth. The theme of the autobiography, right? But Marx, he would go back to the library after each engagement in the world. He wrote with Engels the manifesto in December 1847, published in February 48, which said the specter of communism haunting Europe is coming, it's coming. There were probably 100 communists at the time, so that specter was not big, but the mobilization of the working class in 1848 was there. But Bonaparte, the nephew of Napoleon, Louis Bonaparte, was able to beat back the revolution there, or to take the opportunity to push forward a bourgeois revolution, or to consolidate his position, and became emperor. The working class were kind of pushed off to the side to meet in a hotel, and the society, the thugs of the society of 10 December were too strong. Marx goes after this defeat. Marx and Engels both effectively fight in the uprising of 48. Marx as a journalist, a campaigning journalist. Engels actually riding armed into the battles. But afterwards, after the defeat, Marx goes back to the library and he writes the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte. A quite amazing text. Okay, it's like he's interrupted the political engagement with reflection. And he wrote that text for publication, of course, but also for self-clarification. Again, in 1857, thinking that every 10 years there's a crisis, a new crisis was coming in capitalism, and Marx and Engels in their letters write to each other excitedly about the financial crisis in Europe, in Germany especially, anticipating another wave of struggles, as in 48. But this did not eventuate, in Europe anyway. Marx turns his attention to India at that time. The first national revolution in India, he calls it, the uprising of 1857. Now that, of course, also is eventually beaten back by the British imperialists, and there's so much literature on this, I don't need to tell you much about it, but you know that this was a defeat. The leadership was maybe not lacking somewhat, and the power of the British and the brutality of the British beat back that revolution. Marx had then turned to the library again, and he wrote the Grundrisse, the groundwork for what eventually would become Capital. But it's interesting that after searching for this engagement, and then finding that he has to read and write about India, he also has this habit of going back to scholarship. So then, the next stage in this pattern of interruptions that I'm trying to set out is that in 1871, there was the uprising of the Commune in Paris. Now, Marx had just 4 years before written Capital, published Capital by the evidence of his researchers, okay? And then got involved. Perhaps he thought, some debate about this, he thought that now was not the time for there to be an uprising, that the working class was not yet prepared in terms of organization, leadership. The International was there, but dominated in France by the anarchists, Bakunin and so on. But he supports the Commune and writes actively letters and journal newspaper articles and much to comment on 1871, and then with the defeat, writes a very interesting and engaged text considering all the aspects. This is the book, The Civil War in France, and the pattern is confirmed again. Okay, the French are defeated for various reasons. And then Marx spends the next few years rewriting, supporting, first of all, refugees coming from France, even in his house, but also extensively rewriting and serializing Capital in French, with French working class readers in mind. In fact, the last edition of Capital that he spent time on himself. It's very different from the English version we read, and I find very different from the Vietnamese version, for example, and so on. Now, this pattern is something that I think we can see also in Gandhi. Gandhi, too, was very pleased to report his changing views. He says, I make no hobgoblin of consistency. I love that he uses the word hobgoblin, because that was the word that was used in the first English translation of the Communist Manifesto. Instead of a spectre is haunting Europe, it was a hobgoblin stalks the streets. But yeah, we are good. I make no hobgoblin of consistency. If I am true to myself from moment to moment, I do not mind the inconsistencies that may be flung back in my face. Now, Bipan Chandra, who was the critic before, right? I cited. He named this. Well, he talks about this Gandhian strategy of struggle, truth, struggle. The strategy of non-violence and struggle, truth, struggle was adopted not because it was a bourgeois strategy, but because it was suited to a multi-class mass movement against the semi-democratic, semi-authoritarian, hegemonic British colonial state. Most important, Chandra now, this is Aditya Mukherjee summarizing Chandra. Bipan Chandra now saw Gandhiji as a brilliant leader of a popular movement who, far from being bourgeois or non-revolutionary, played a critical role in trying to ensure that the class adjustment that necessarily had to happen in any multi-class movement happened in India, increasingly in favor of the oppressed. Now, this was the interruption pattern that now was transposed from Marx's engagement with politics and head to the library. And Gandhi was in terms of activist struggle. You think of the taking on of mass movements, and then the use of hunger strike to push them in the right way, to oppose communalism, or to sometimes end in the trajectory, the violent trajectory that some of the struggles took. Struggle, truce, struggle. The truce, of course, is the compromise with the state, but one recognized now by even the critics of Gandhiji as necessary if you are to have a multi-class, trans-caste, trans-faith, trans-class movement, right, that is in favor of the oppressed. In the same way, Marx somehow is always looking for the perspective of the whole, so that the working class will be the agent of revolution, of activity. I think there's a parallel to be discussed here. I'm not saying that this is the same by any chance, by any stretch of the imagination, but there is a parallel in this structure of interruption that belongs to both, that in fact is missed in both when the concepts are congealed into unchanging accusations. What else is similar? You know that the significance of a coat for Marx is huge, and homespun cloth for Gandhi. All through Capital, Marx is obsessed with the making of a coat, right? 20 yards of linen, which transforms before our eyes, in order to show the working of his theoretical presentation, right? He's setting out Capital in a series of theoretical concepts, not a description of how things are. And it's one that changes over the course of the book and over the course of his life. The famous photographs of Gandhi seated at his chakra spinning. This is an image that's massively reproduced everywhere, on money, on stamps. There must be commemorative cups even. I'm surprised if not t-shirts. Just one of the points of symbolic resonance, but I include it because it can become something like a congealed, frozen moment. Now, I'd pair the photograph of the spinning wheel with the photograph of Marx getting a haircut. Right? That's one where he writes in a letter to Engels from Algiers that he's discarded his heavy rhinoceros greatcoat. I've written an essay about this, called Marx in Calcutta. They nearly traveled to Calcutta as well. And he had himself shorn, had his beard shaved off. Now, the idea of Marx without a beard is like Gandhi without a spinning wheel. Right? And yes, there are many times when this will have happened. The point is to not see them as unchanging. Now, the first political engagements of Marx are his writings about the Silesian weavers in Germany and their struggle for adequate conditions and against the new industrial machinery. They are like breaking the machines that are being introduced to put them out of work. And Gandhi's first entry into politics after returning from South Africa, that is his first entry into politics in India, was on behalf, or along with, the farmers of Champaran in Behar, who were forced by indigo planters to grow indigo and opium without proper remuneration. Now, Marx's interest in weavers also features in Capital, where the British Governor General is forced to lament that the bones of the cotton weavers are bleaching in the plains, right? This is quoted in the Times. Marx is continually doing this thing where he's like a tick of paying attention, making a theoretical point in Capital, and then a reference to two kinds of struggle, India and to the Civil War in America. Very interested in that strategy of interruption as well. So yes, a student of technologies and textiles should probably start with weaving, and it would not be a frivolous gesture to consider Marx's comments on the sewing machine as a way of getting into domestic labor, for example. Gandhi too writes of the sewing machine, and he makes two interesting associations. First of all, he's thinking of the effort to reintroduce homespun cotton, but the second reference is to a writing machine. Sorry, a writing machine? Yes, to a typewriter. I think this is fantastic. Remember, I'm focusing on the texts. Gandhi is talking about a typewriter in relation to machineries of technology. He says, I know that there are friends who laugh at this attempt to revive the great art of homespun, right, of chakra. They remind me of the days of mills, sewing machines, or typewriters. Only a lunatic can hope to succeed in reviving the rusticated spinning wheel. These friends forget that the needle has not yet given place to the sewing machine, nor has the hand lost its cunning in spite of the typewriter. In fact, we are still using the pen, the pencil, and so on, even though we are writing directly onto the machine. Very often, this is still written in note form. The two are following a similar trajectory. 10 years later, in 1929, Gandhi applauds the labor-saving device of the Singer sewing machine. Right? So he's not just against the sewing machine. He sees that the sewing machine was invented by Singer out of love, after seeing his wife slaving over needle and thread. Asked if this invention then does not simply imply a factory and industrial labor to produce sewing machines, Gandhi replies, yes, I'm socialist enough to say that such factories should be nationalized or state-controlled, not for profit, but for the benefit of humanity. Love taking the place of greed is the motive. It's an alteration in the conditions of labor that they want. A mad rush for wealth, it must cease. Now, the sewing machine is how Marx gets into the costs of reproduction of the family, but you can see that they are both using the machine to say the same kinds of things. I mean, there's much to be said about Marx and the reproduction of the family, a story he doesn't go into enough, as has been commented by many in the wake of the work of Leopoldina Fortunati and Silvia Federici, and more recently Camille Barbagello, on the way in which capital reaches into the home and makes a commodity relation, unpaid labor, a commodity relation of the relations inside the domestic space. They are both paying attention to this public-private breakdown. The oppressed classes. On the oppressed, Marx, as Iqbal Ahmed reports, was obviously focused our attention on the poor and the working class. As Chandra pointed out, Gandhi's role in bringing the popular movement in favor of the oppressed was key to his politics. Gandhiji's emphasis on working among the masses and especially the untouchables, right, in a period when no one else had come round to taking up the cause of these sections. The Gandhian nationalists, in their own way, initiated and kept up the resistance. There are many topics we could go into deeply, but we'll have to rush. On unemployment, Marx's capital lays stress on the precarious, the latent, floating, and stagnant reserve army of labor. Obviously, this will have resonance for Gandhian. On the village, another topic would be huge. Marx was always interested in the communal ownership of lands, and his knowledge at first derived from philosophers, Hegel on Asia, right? Just see Gayatri Spivak's chapter 1 of Critique of Post-Colonial Reason episode. But increasingly, reading so much from Maine, Lubbock, ethnographers, Bengal Hakur newspaper, and so on. And on unity, a big topic. Consider what Gandhi offers in terms of Hindu-Muslim unity, All India Radio as a technology. This is not just a discussion of tolerance. It goes to the heart of what India has become on Gandhi today. Statues were being blindfolded in Gujarat in the past, right? See the essay by Vikram Rao. Poignant, given what's happening to statues of Marx after the fall of sausage and three veg communism in Europe. And the throwing of statues, right? The statues seem to be an ongoing topic, keeps on being brought up. But I have to rush over that. On opium. Now, opium was the number one productive source of revenue for the East India Company and for the British merchants afterwards, and for such a long time. And Marx was very keen on critiquing this, but also famously said that religion is the opium of the people. And this is the one where congealed Marx is put forward so often. But you know, if you open up the quote a little bit, you'll see that actually there's some closer resonance with Gandhi. Let's open the opium of the people quote. You read the first sentence before that, religious suffering is one at the same time the expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, and the soul of the soulless conditions. It's the opium of the people. The soul of soulless conditions, the heart of a heartless world. I now hear this in the voice of someone other than Marx in this paper. See the resonance. I hope you see. Gandhi too was not wholly on a dissimilar track. In Hind Swaraj in 1909, castigating the comprador class using the analogy with cannabis, he said, who is assisting the company's officers? Who is assisting the East India Company to make the profit? And falls into the arms of the company. We assist them, he says. Who should I blame for that? And at one point, Gandhi also says salt is an addiction. Of course, he was always critical of those who are indirectly guilty of poisoning natives with liquor sold illicitly or stupefying Indian miners by selling them opium in contravention of the law. I think in general, not just in contravention. He shares this with Ho Chi Minh. Actually, Ho Chi Minh's main point over and over again in saying why the French must go from Vietnam is because of the poisoning by opium. In Hind Swaraj, Gandhi says of opium, I will skip these quotes, you can read them. For Marx, he makes a similar point about a mother who's out of ignorance or not knowing enough, gives this so-called medicine to her child and the child dies. And in Marx's case too, looking at the workers in the mills, in the cotton mills in England, the women are having to feed their children Godfrey's cordial to keep them quiet because they can't afford childminders or care. And this leads to high death rates. Godfrey's cordial, think of the name, cordial is the guilty party there. And especially Godfrey's cordial, it sat in a bottle. Okay, a small bottle, but you gave 1 teaspoon at a time. But because the bottle sat, the opium settled inside the suspended liquid. So by the end of the bottle, 1 spoonful was way more stronger and dangerous than the beginning of the medicine. Medicine can be a poison, something we also find in the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi. So Marx and Gandhi are often on the same page. Marx supports the Chinese resistance to the British in the Opium War and even recommends to the emperor that he legalize Class A drugs. Gandhi laments the way the Chinese are enslaved to opium. Yet the opiate also opens the question of self-awareness. And this is interesting from both. It's very curious that Gandhi links this to an awareness of difference among Indians as simultaneously as the awareness needed to show how the gifts of colonialism are tainted. And he talks about this in terms of the railways. Right? Now, an opium eater may argue the advantage of opium eating from the fact that you begin to understand the evil of opium eating after having eaten it. And Gandhi wants to say that railways are something like that. You see the stamp now is with Jamjetsi Jijiboy. Marx too famously, notoriously wrote about the effect of the railways on India. Of course, again, that essay, 1853, by Marx on India, is one that he moved in the subsequent 30 or so essays on India in the New York Daily Tribune. He moved away from that. Remember, he was a journalist writing a column for the largest circulation daily newspaper in America. And, in Gandhi also written in Hind Swaraj and elsewhere on the railways and the way the transport network is consolidating power. Of course, Gandhi also travels by train. How could you consider his activism without that network? This is dialectic. On violence, you can also find similarities between do or die, writing this on a piece of paper, and being ready to lay down lives in attempt to free India in 42, quit India, but also writing The Cult of the Bomb. What's significantly overlooked too is often that Marx, like Gandhi, was able to and necessarily did change his position in the face of events which provoked critical self-reflection. This is the heart of Experiments in Truth, and it's the practice Marx first set up with the 18th Brumaire. And on revising, Gayatri Spivak teaches just recently in a lecture in Kolkata in 2018 on the 200th anniversary of Marx's birthday, a reference to how in 1872 the manifesto, which is coming up for reissue, was not changed by the authors. They decided not to change the text despite thinking that the second section on revolutionary strategy was now obsolete. However much things have changed during the last 25 years, the general principles laid down in the manifesto on a whole are correct as ever. Here and there, some detail might be improved, especially, they say, in the second section. For that reason, no special stress is laid on the revolutionary measures proposed at the end of section 2. Now, readers of the manifesto must recognize that in 50 years, the manifesto and the position of Marx and Engels will change. The document itself, though, is historical. So as readers from afar in years, we have to understand this process of change, of interruption, when we read the texts, the letters, the comments. Each comment, you can go through every comment. There's so many things to discuss and find support for your position. But recognize the process of interruption that belongs to both great thinkers. So my conclusion, I know I've taken a little bit too long, is at the end, I'm recommending that we take up Gandhi's recommendation for daily writing, but we do that also with daily reading practice as a kind of consciousness raising. Yes, also we need activism and we need engagement, but we need to see this in reading a constant discussion, and we tell this from Marx's letters as well, of who's writing what. I mean, this is why a ticket to the British Library was so prized, and why reading the newspapers, reading the texts, and renewing this practice is so important part of education today. To renew the sifting through of this immense accumulation of texts and documents that we have, that are all we have of these great souls. That's our task today, and perhaps it's beyond any one of us. But the excitement I have for this emerging possibility of reading more and more of these texts as they're published, as they become in collected issues, as you can get them as PDFs online, as we can talk about them and circulate them, that is profound, I think, and moving along all the time. And no single person, and no single text can represent the effort, but the point is there still for us to grasp and change. This is where I stop. Thank you very much for listening to all that. I hope it's of some interest. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, John Hutnak, the Associate Professor at Thag University, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, for your enlightful and wonderful lecture, sir. We are highly benefited because in this Gandhi Jayanti, we have here a lot of new thing also. You talk about Bipan Chandra, you talk about all those things, Marx and Friedrich Engels, and how it relate with Gandhi. It's a great one, and it's nice to watch all your PPTs. And if it is a request to you, sir, if it's possible, you can share those PPTs to the participant, because they are asking for the PPTs. Because it's a very small time to discuss all those things in international webinar, but you are giving your precious time, and sir, we are very thankful on behalf of Cooch Behar College, NSS Unit 2. We really appreciate your talk, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. I also discuss on the chat. Yeah.
Okay, you are doing so. Thank you, sir.
Comments welcome.
Now I would like to welcome our next speaker. We are waiting for him, Christian Bartol, President, Gandhian Information Center, Germany. Sir, are you here?
Yeah.
Christian Bartol. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, welcome to the Cooch Behar College, this international webinar platform. On behalf of Cooch Behar College, West Bengal, India, and NSS unit, we are welcoming you, Mr. Christian Bartol, founder and director, Gandhi Information Center, research and educational scientist, and his this institute visited too many eminent persons, and it's a long list. We can say it here, and stage is yours, sir. You are waiting for some time. Thank you, sir. Stage is yours. Mr. Christian Bartol, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. It was very impressive to see some reference on Gandhi and Marx, and now I'm about to speak about Gandhi and Huxley. So this is amazing. This is an amazing combination. And in fact, in case you are taping this wonderful session, I would like you to send me a link so that I can listen to all this again. I'm sorry that I missed the lecture of the Italian professor, so I don't know what to say. Nothing else I can say. What I prepared is there are three items I brought with me, and I want to ask you if we start with this clip of the Threepenny Opera, because it's a very good transition to the last presentation. It's let me say, the result of a Marxist, someone who was obviously accused to be a communist, and his name became worldwide famous. It was Bertolt Brecht. So maybe you allow me to share the screen. Is it possible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's possible.
And
yes,
I hope that the sound will be audible then. So let us have a look. This is a technical experiment now. So it is related to your city, Cooch Behar, and you know it already, Dr. Ghosh.
Right, sir.
Yes. So if possible, you can also play it from your side, but I try to play it from my side. Is it okay? Yes. So I will present. So, but someone should allow me to present. I think this is mostly the problem.
Joy, are you here? Sorry to interrupting you, sir. Joy, তুমি আছো? Joy Devayu, আমাদের স্যারকে একটু হেল্প করে দাও। Please help sir to share his screen.
Yes, that would be nice. Yes.
So they are my volunteers, our NSS volunteers.
Yeah.
And so thank you for giving me the precious time, sir. Okay.
Well, sure. I hope that that we will be able to play this.
Please click here, 3 dot.
So now you think it's possible for me to share the screen, yes? That is very good. In case this is possible, I would like to share the screen. One moment. And so
Joy,
do I share the screen now?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that is great. That is great. That is great. So let us have a look. Now I hope you can listen to the sound. I will open the sound a bit. It's a song of the Threepenny Opera of Bertolt Brecht. It's about British imperialism and militarism. So
Aber die Fügung des Schicksals sind eigenartig. Also wissen schon, was ich damit meine. Und so kommt dieser Mann heute zu mir, Mackie Messer, als Freund zum Freunde. Da könnt ihr was lernen. Maggie, kannst du dich erinnern, wie wir, du als Soldat, ich als Soldat, bei der Armee in Indien gedient haben? Sag lieber, Jackie. Das waren Zeiten. Doch die Armee war keine Wehrseite und marschierte hinauf nach den Norden. Soldaten bogen auf den Kanonen von Kapp bis zum Behar. Wenn es mal regnete und es begegnete ihnen eine neue Rasse, den braune oder blasse, da machten sie vielleicht daraus ihr diesen Johnny war da wie sie so weit und Jimmy hatte nicht genug Flecken. Aber George nahm beide weit ab und sagte, wir müssen verrecken. Soldaten wohnen auf den Kanonen von Hamburg bis zum Behar. Wenn es mal regnete und es begegnete ihnen eine neue Rasse, den braune oder blasse, da machen sie vielleicht daraus ihr Gesicht. John ist gestorben, Jimmy ist tot und George ist vermisst und verloren. Aber Ruth ist immer noch froh, Julianine geht wieder geworden. Soldaten wohnen auf den Kanonen von Kapp bis zum Behar. Wenn es mal regnete und es begegnete ihnen eine neue Rasse, braune oder blasse, da machen sie vielleicht daraus wirklich Fett.
So I hope you could you could listen to the sound.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That is great. Yes. So you see, this is the exposition of the bitter truth of British imperialism and militarism, and now you might think, what is now the transition? How will the presenter now come from Bertolt Brecht's exposition of the British imperialism and militarism during the 20s of the last century to Aldous Huxley. It was the same time when Aldous Huxley visited India, and he was a British. So I would like to tell you during the next minutes a bit about Aldous Huxley and show you some tables of our exhibition. So I will show you first the exhibition, because I already did this sharing of the screen. Perhaps, yeah, here you are. You see this, can you see this, this table, yeah?
No, sir. No.
No, you can't see this table, so I did not share the screen, no? Then I share the screen again, yes, one moment. Oh, but it cannot be shared. Do you want me to share the screen?
No. You can, sir.
I cannot share the screen, so I just I could not even show you Bertolt Brecht's film clip. Yeah, is that right? So
you need to present now. It's in the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Then you choose the frame you want to present to us.
But it cannot be shared from my side. I need some license to do so, so I cannot present.
Oh, sorry, you can present now.
No.
Click present now, and then it gives you a selection of.
No, it's not possible. Yeah, no.
Okay.
No, it's not possible from the other side, so I'm not allowed to present. So you didn't see this.
Allowed. No, actually we listen it. So we have listened it.
Yeah,
but,
you listen to the song. Yeah, that's right. So then I cannot share with you the tables of our exhibition, which is a pity. So then I refer to text. So text only is left, but text will be also interesting. It is an essay on Huxley and Gandhi. So now I read my text, and I hope you enjoy, because it is certainly really interesting. You know, I want to first tell you that Aldous Huxley was the famous author of dystopian novels, became worldwide famous, but he was also a humanist and pacifist. And he also understood Gandhi during the 30s and afterwards. So he even appreciated Gandhi very much. He learned from Gandhi, and he represented Gandhi in Britain and all over the world, because Aldous Huxley understood the challenge of Gandhi during the 30s. That was after the Salt March, you know, that was after Gandhi's visit in London. That was after Aldous Huxley was asked by the BBC in London to speak about the causes of war. And then Aldous Huxley, who was not a Marxist, he insisted on speaking about the psychological causes of war, not the economic causes of war. And this, with a friendship with this BBC journalist, was the trigger, the starting point for Aldous Huxley to understand Mahatma Gandhi from a new point of view. Because, can you imagine, he met Gandhi in India before, but he did not fully understand. He had a different attitude, more an aristocratic attitude, you know, arrogant attitude. You know, I've also been accused of being arrogant several times in my life. So certainly he was from a social group where this was a very important attitude, but also to you know, sharpen the critical thought. And now I read you my essay on Aldous Huxley and Mahatma Gandhi. So now I start my presentation. The famous author of the 1931 dystopian novel Brave New World, the essayist novel writer Aldous Huxley, grandson of the famous biologist Thomas Henry Huxley, this grandfather of Aldous Huxley was referred to explicitly by Gandhi in Hind Swaraj, by the way. This Aldous Huxley became a pacifist, humanist, philosopher, and satirist, and he was the brother of the evolutionary biologist, internationalist Sir Julian Huxley, UNESCO's first Director General. And both of them, Aldous Huxley as well as Gandhi, wrote a letter to UNESCO. It was in the formation of UNESCO, and then the president was Sir Julian Huxley. That was the brother. After listening to Mahatma Gandhi's address at the 40th All India Congress at Kanpur in 1925, it was in December 1925, during his journey to India, he read Mahatma Gandhi's autobiography, and Huxley wrote an Indian diary, which he later published under the title Jesting Pilot, the Diary of a Journey. And in July 1930, he published critical essays on Gandhi in the magazine Vanity Fair, What Gandhi Fails to See. But 7 years later, under the impression of the rise of the Hitler dictatorship, of German fascism, and later then the Spanish Civil War, he edited a pacifist encyclopedia and summarized his appreciation for Mahatma Gandhi's concept of nonviolent resistance, satyagraha. And I show you this book. Now you can see, yeah? This is the book, yeah? You see this book, yeah? What an interesting book, isn't it? It should be spread, you know? It is a historic document, yeah? An encyclopedia of pacifism by edited by Aldous Huxley. Together, some authors were Ruth Fry and here they follow. What are you going to do about it? By the way, this is an announcement pamphlet. Belief in peace. Aldous Huxley was, but you will listen to this later. He was instrumental in building up the Peace Pledge Union, but one after the other. So in the Encyclopedia of Pacifism, Huxley described his appreciation for Gandhi's concept of nonviolent resistance in the following words. It is in the East that we find the most striking examples of nonviolence practiced by large groups. In South Africa and later in India, Gandhi organized nonviolent resistance to the government. The South African experiment was remarkably successful. In India, a number of very considerable successes were recorded, and it was shown that very large groups of men and women could be trained to respond to the most brutal treatment with a quiet courage and equanimity that profoundly impressed their opponents, the spectators in the immediate vicinity, and through press accounts, the public opinion of the whole civilized world. This book was published in 1937. This Encyclopedia of Pacifism was published under the auspices of the Peace Pledge Union in London. The Peace Pledge Union dated back to the day when the English Anglican priest and Dean of Canterbury, Hugh Richard Laurie Dick Shepherd, on 16th October 1934 invited any man who felt as he did to send him a postcard stating that he renounced war and would never again take part in another one. By the beginning of 1937, almost 130,000 citizens of the British Empire declared, "We renounce war and never again, directly or indirectly, will we support or sanction another." As early as 1920, Huxley had considered the Great War, the First World War, as a shocking catastrophe. He wrote, "Already the war, making history as it did with a dramatic violence which nobody but a blind and paralytic deaf mute could fail to be conscious of, has produced a vast crop of novels that have recorded with more or less subtlety the changes in our habits of life and thought brought about by the catastrophe of 1914. The shock was so rude that every novelist became, for the time being, a social novelist. It was impossible to avoid taking the historical point of view. Sooner or later there will arise a larger mind, tentacular as it were, with feelers spreading far and wide over the whole face of this epoch, and we shall get from it a new comédie humaine. It will give us the history of our time written from within, a history that shall be true in the intimate, immediate details and true in the broad, significant outlines." This was Aldous Huxley in 1920. And you feel a social responsibility. He also witnessed trials against conscientious objectors in England during the First World War. Don't forget this, and also refer to this in one of his first prose pieces. So he didn't all start in the 30s. It was born long before. 8 years later, he emphasized, that was in 1928, he emphasized the fatal effects of military education and war propaganda as the main ideological tools to transform a peaceful society into a bellicose and belligerent one. The art of war propaganda, that's what Huxley wrote, "The art of war propaganda is the art of telling lies about the enemy in the most effective and moving way possible." In the year 1925, Huxley had published his dissent against fascism and Bolshevism, while describing himself as a humanist advocate of humanitarian principles for the well-being of each individual, even the weakest. Fascism is as undesirable as Bolshevism. The lynch law and the professional philanthropy with which America tempers her democratic system are no better. All these alternatives err in their antagonism to personal freedom, their anti-humanitarianism, their hierarchical stiffness. The ideal of all the anti-democrats up to the present has been an ideal of increased formality and rigidity. A system that is to replace democracy has not yet been invented. I offer no suggestions beyond the sufficiently obvious one that it would be a good thing if human societies could be governed by their best and most intelligent members. Whether it will ever be possible to induce the best and most intelligent men to take part in an occupation as thoroughly discreditable as politics, that is another question. In the year 1927, after Huxley's journey to South and East Asia, he first described his dystopian vision of a future society with consumerism, eugenics, and strict hierarchies. A dystopia, or simply anti-utopia, is a community or society that is undesirable or frightening. It is translated as not good place. An antonym of utopia, a term that was coined by Sir Thomas More and figures as the title of his most well-known work, Utopia. Utopia is the blueprint for an ideal society with no crime or poverty. Dystopian societies appear in many artistic works, particularly in stories set in the future. Some of the most famous examples, as you know, were George Orwell's novel 1984, Eric Blair, George Orwell, real name Eric Blair, he was Huxley's pupil in French lessons at Eton College, but also Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Dystopias are often characterized by dehumanization, totalitarian governments, environmental disaster, or other characteristics associated with a cataclysmic decline in society. Dystopian societies appear in many subgenres of fiction and are often used to draw attention to real-world issues regarding society, environment, politics, economics, religion, psychology, ethics, science, technology, which, if undressed, could potentially lead to such a dystopia-like condition. And in 1927, he wrote, "In the future that we envisage, eugenics will be practiced in order to improve the human breed, and the instincts will not be ruthlessly repressed, but as far as possible sublimated, so as to express themselves in socially harmless ways. Education will not be the same for all individuals. Children of different types will receive different training. Society will be organized as a hierarchy of mental quality, and the form of government will be aristocratic in the literal sense of the word. That is to say, the best will rule. The future of the immediate future will be a more definite and detailed version of the future of the present. Our children may look forward to the establishment of a new caste system based on differences in natural ability, to a Machiavellian system of education designed to give the members of the lower caste only that which it is profitable for the members of the upper caste that they should know. In time, eugenic breeding may to a great extent falsify these prophecies by abolishing the lower castes altogether, in which case it is possible that political democracy may be revived in a new form. But these are contingencies too remote to be discussed." Now let us, as hardcore of this text, examine for a moment Aldous Huxley's almost unknown Indian diary, published under the title Jesting Pilot, The Diary of a Journey in 1926, which also describes Huxley's self-transformation to an ardent critic of his own Western civilization, under the influence of his Indian days and nights. Huxley first compares the decline of the British Empire by comparing the empire's power with the valuation of banknotes transforming to mere paper without value in times of effective, non-violent, non-cooperation campaigns, as he envisaged for India. And this I would like to continue to talk now. But you know, I'm a bit short in time because of another commitment So I want to tell you that it will always be a pleasure to join you again, you know, for a session like this. I'm very, very happy that you invited me. But you know, Huxley met Gandhi in Kanpur, but he was mostly impressed by Sarojini Naidu. And Huxley in the 30s was really the most important, I would say, muscle in Europe to spread the ideas of Gandhi with respect to nonviolent resistance in England, you know. And there's so much to be said about Gandhi and Huxley. Maybe I should at least mention that Huxley was most impressed by Sir J.C. Bose, who he visited in Kolkata, and also Gandhi referred to Sir J.C. Bose's discoveries during his message called Spiritual Message and broadcasted by Columbia Gramophone Company. And you can read this in the article God is 1931. And after the catastrophe of the atom bombs on the Japanese cities Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Huxley published his essay Science, Liberty and Peace, in which he referred to Krishnalal Sridharani's pioneer work, which I recommend wholeheartedly, War Without Violence, a study of Gandhi's method and its accomplishments from 1939. So Huxley in 1946 propagated satyagraha, and I will speak to you. I will read these last two quotes from this essay, which I mentioned, Science, Liberty and Peace, 1946, and this is following. Is there any way out of the unfavorable political situation in which, thanks to applied science, the masses now find themselves? So far, only one hopeful issue has been discovered. In South Africa and later in India, Gandhi and his followers were confronted by an oppressive government armed with overwhelming military might. Gandhi, who is not only an idealist and a man of principle, but also an intensely practical politician, attempted to cope with this seemingly desperate situation by organizing a non-violent form of direct action, which he called satyagraha. This was Aldous Huxley in Science, Liberty and Peace in 1946. And in 1939, this is my last quote I wanted to give to you. This is Aldous Huxley's note on Gandhi, published by Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan in his collection of essays and reflections on Gandhi's life and work presented to Gandhi on his 70th birthday, October 2nd, 1939, published also not only in Allahabad, but also in London 10 years later. So 1939 in Allahabad and in London 1949. And in this note on Gandhi, a note on Gandhi by Aldous Huxley, he wrote, Gandhi, like Jefferson, thought of politics in moral and religious terms. That is why his proposed solutions bear so close a resemblance to those proposed by the great American, that he went further than Jefferson, for example, in recommending economic as well as political decentralization and in advocating the use of satyagraha in place of the Ward's elementary exercises of militia, is due to the fact that his ethic was more radical and his religion more profoundly realistic than Jefferson's. Jefferson's plan was not adopted, nor was Gandhi's. So much the worse for us and our descendants. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor and the Christian Bartolf, President Gandhian Information Center, Germany, for your insightful lecture and thoughts. And we are very sorry that there may be a technical problem. so that you can share your screen. But it's a great thing that all the galaxies of the intellectuals, we are with them in this international webinar platform, and we are happy if you come in the near future in our any webinar, sir. Sir, nice to talk with you over, not over telephone, but by the text, simple text. But you are here with our words, and we are on behalf of Cooch Behar College, West Bengal, and NSS unit. We are thankful to you, sir, Christian Bartolf, for your precious time. You are giving your precious time, but we will definitely give you all the participants giving their feedback. They are very much enlightened by your lecture, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh, and I would like to see this this wonderful conference of yours again on tape, and also I would like to continue our wonderful dialogue. And I see that you have the necessary good humor to do this work, and I wish you the very best for the future. And I'm also very grateful that I could listen to one of your guests, who I very much appreciate. So let us continue some other time. And now I will emigrate to Bangalore.
Right.
Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you. Bye. Now I would like to welcome our respected Professor Ranjita Chakraborty from North Bengal University. And before I inviting ma'am, I want to say some. First of all, the Ranjita Chakraborty is a professor and currently serving North Bengal University as head of the Department of Political Science. Her research interests include gender studies, environmental studies, human rights issues, public administration, Indian government, politics, etc., women empowerment and gender insecurities. A South Asian perspective live-in book, Kolkata 2009, is a notable work by Professor Chakraborty, and as editor. Many of her research papers have been published in national and international journals and also in books. She has conducted many research projects successfully and also worked in a UN-funded project on trafficking, child marriage, and dowry in West Bengal. Notably, a number of MPhil and PhD scholars are pursuing their research under her guidance. Thank you, ma'am. Welcome to Cooch Behar College, this international webinar platform, and on behalf of NSS unit. Thank you, ma'am. Please be with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shukanto. First of all, it's a great honor to be a co-panelist amongst such luminaries. And also, I would extend greetings from India to my co-panelists, because I happen to be also from India, and I was listening to their speakers, my the earlier speakers, and quite an enriching time. I really enjoyed the session. In fact, what I was looking or kind of listening to was the contribution and also the reflections on Gandhi. And what I felt also is that Gandhi is not just, we have a tendency to usually, when we look at individuals, either we try to look at the individuals in black and white. We have a tendency to understand the individuals at black and white, and also have a kind of either a very positive attitude or a very negative attitude. And in the process, we somehow lose the sight of the individual and the contributions. So I have decided, or rather what I have felt Gandhi is not just historical figure, or you would say the father of the nation, or a thinker for that matter, but a person who has contributed immensely and still continues to contribute in our everyday lives, in our everyday understanding of our problems and also solutions. So basically what I have tried to look at, like as you go through the various works, you would find that he's looked at as a practical idealist, a kind of a social practitioner with high ethical standards. And we look into his political ideas, his social ideas, his spiritual philosophy. But what I have tried to focus today is that how can we actually understand Gandhi and use or contextualize Gandhi in our present situation, that is in present context, that is present India or the world, or how can I contextualize Gandhi, say for example, within me, within my students whom I teach, within the young generation, how do I make Gandhi relevant? So what I have seen is that when we were looking at, or in fact, even the earlier speakers were speaking of, that he was very much influenced by, his influence was something that you would see if you read Gandhi and also his autobiography. A very interesting thing comes up, that he was deeply influenced by the religious influence. One is the Jain religious philosophy and the other is the Vaishnavite philosophy from both the parents. So, in fact, his thought is heavily built on his study of not just these two philosophies, but also the world's greatest religions. And he tried to integrate these ideals with his ideas on peace, on what kind of a society, what kind of an economic structure, what kind of development, what kind of social justice, and basically, how do we live our lives? Now, he believed that in fact, when you read Gandhi, you also try to see, or you can make out that there are a lot of things or ideas which kind of you would say, for example, when you are talking about environment, something, or you are talking about a very, you would say a very modern idea of a sustainable development, it was there in Gandhi. So Gandhi is someone who has, you could say that he has surpassed his time, and he is beyond is beyond that particular time when he was living. So it cannot be said that, okay, he was working at a point when he was fighting for the independence of India, and then he had certain ideas and it's there, it's ending. But the very fact that we are conducting, or we are having a lot of webinars or lectures on Gandhi, and still research is being carried on, and a lot of people are actually discussing him in the new light, that shows that how relevant or how contextual he is, or how can we make him, that there is a desire in us to see one Gandhi in us also. Now, what I find that Gandhi believed that all human beings had a divine element in them, and it is in being humane that the purpose of humankind is fulfilled. He believed that all of life as a creation was interdependent, and therefore cooperation and harmony was natural, and competition and conflict was something that was an aberration. So if harmony is the prime value and cooperation is one of the major values, then what we find is that he also talks about the equality of all lives, and following this argument that there should be respect towards all lives. So it is not that only human life is important, but all life, anything that has got life. So you would see a kind of echo of what we talk of sustainable development or environmental ethics. The second interesting point that he makes is that there exists no center, no boundaries, as all lives are interdependent. And the values that are important are compassion and respect for others' interest. That is, there may be diversities, there would be differences, but what is important is the essence of equality, and looking at or understanding the perspective of others with compassion. So you may be different, I may be different, we may have disagreements, we may have differences, but respecting that difference is also something that is a key takeaway point. In fact, Gandhi cannot be completed in, say, for example, a 30 minutes time, but what I have tried to is try to bring up certain points which I found violent on others. You are actually being violent towards yourself. So ahimsa to him was a state of mental purification and positive acts whereby one views people as good and kind-hearted, and also self-purified with compassion and love for all. Injustice and oppression. Now the question is that we often have problems with Gandhi is that what does that mean? Then don't we or shouldn't we resist injustice and oppression? Or what does it talk about? Or what is his opinion about dissent? He says that injustice and oppression must be resisted and should not be accepted. But it should be resisted through not some violent means, but through satyagraha. Because to him, ahimsa as love is viewed by him as truth, and truth is a kind of a moral position towards which one should strive. Now, adherence to strive would also produce a kind of a moral power, and that's what the first speaker was speaking about, that you are not coward, you are courageous. It takes a lot of power, it takes a lot of moral power to be non-violent, to stand against violence, and without using, even in thought you are not being violent. That means supreme courage. That takes a lot of power. So Gandhi equated ahimsa with justice, and here justice meant truth. Now, satyagraha, if you find, it is a kind of a dialectical process in which the satyagrahi seeks a greater degree of unity among participants. A satyagrahi withstands another person's violence without retaliation to demonstrate moral courage. Acts of moral courage, Gandhi believed, would serve to convert the opponent and convince them to the rightness of a desired social change. So basically his argument is this moral courage or the moral power, that you are standing and you are not being violent, you are not even thinking of violence, that would actually convert even the most violent person into kind of the kind of change that you would want to, and it would have the potential to convert. Now, by linking these concepts of satyagraha, truth, and non-violence, he tried to remove the distinction between religion as such and the projection of ethical laws through morally justifiable social instruments into the realm of social action. Now, there is a very interesting book by R.D. Sethi. One can look into that. It's a very old book, but that's very interesting point. Although the principle of ahimsa clearly delineates a path for self-realization through service and social justice, he extended this principle through sarvodaya, or welfare of all. Now, it also meant assistance first to the neediest of the needy, the service to others as a general imperative, and a specific ethical obligation to serve first those in great need. Now, Gandhism holds that means and ends are convertible terms. So we cannot say that we can reach, the goal is good, so we can reach that goal by any kind of a means, but the means has also to be pure, and that ends grows out of the means as the tree grows out of the seed. Now, welfare for all would therefore mean welfare for the individual. So non-violence is to be used as a weapon of social change and welfare of all, and as a governing principle of society. Now, to ensure welfare of all, Gandhi advocated for duty, as was already as was pointed out by the first speaker today, that basically he is giving a new dimension to it, that is duty of all towards their neighbors, that would enable the extension and inclusion of all within the web or of social justice, which would lead to the formation of a good society. Now, to him, the purpose of life is spiritual development through service to humanity. Gandhi wanted the poverty of the masses to be removed through the pursuance of the Swadeshi doctrine, which meant self-reliance, but with a kind of, what he said, very important, I want my windows to be open to let other winds of other cultures into my room, but I will not allow my roof to be blown off by these winds. So he was actually talking of something very important, that self-reliance did not mean that you are actually not allowing other influences to come in. Any good influence is definitely good and in fact welcome, but then I should be very clear that my individuality, my own culture, my own specific identity, that needs to be protected. Now, if we look, that he was very much, in fact, that was also reiterated early in the earlier speeches, that in when he was in Africa, Gandhi read a lot of Tolstoy, Ruskin, and Bible, and just like his ideas on Sarvodaya, if you see, it was not just influenced by Jainism and Buddhism, but he was also influenced by Ruskin. And the crux of the whole thing is that he was talking about, and in fact, another point that was raised was that he was deeply influenced by Bhagavad Gita. Now, I would say that he developed this concept of bread labor, which is the crux of his economic thought. And in fact, he adapted it. He did take the ideas, but he adapted it into a new way. In fact, this idea of bread labor, that is very important in Gandhian economic, socio-cultural and economic system, that it was basically, it is said that he borrowed from Tolstoy, who actually took the idea from T.M. Bondarev, who was a Russian author, and Gandhi found that this was also there in Gita, Bhagavad Gita, and he kind of changed it or adapted it to suit the Indian situation, to suit the Indian system. And where he pointed out there should be a situation or create employment for all through production by masses, but not mass production. Production by masses, but not mass production, which is very important point that he made. And this is also a point from where a lot of criticisms have emerged, that whether it is at all possible. So Gandhi was, in fact, was very much troubled by these large institutions that distanced themselves from the people. In particular, he believed that large corporate houses or some kind of a centralized government institutions were unable to reach out to the people. Therefore, he advocated for a locally controlled forms of social organization. In fact, Gandhi can be said to be the precursor to be the precursor to the idea of civil society organizations that are very common these days in India. In fact, locally, he pointed out that locally based social services agencies can be viewed as the most appropriate response mechanism through which to serve the immediate and individualized needs of the people. Now, one should strive to live a moral life within this immediate context of one's life, but with an intent to create ripples, that is to create change that would move on to wider levels. That is, if you are bringing in change or you are incorporating a change, then it should not be that it is just limited to one point, rather it should have the potential to spread. Now, here I would take up the point from here. In fact, what kind of a social services organization I would situate the NSS, which is a kind of a scheme that is there in most, in fact, in all the colleges which is running. And in fact, NSS was launched during the birth centenary celebrations of Mahatma Gandhi, and with it is one such locally based organization whose volunteers have the potential to respond to their immediate context, and facilitate social justice and harmonious development through social work. So NSS is not just if it is just taken an organization or a scheme where the college students, they come and they do some work and then they are fulfilling the task assigned to them. It is one way of looking, but then the purpose would be solved, or rather this particular organization or this entity can be used to generate ripples within the immediate context. Say, for example, around the college region, the margins, which are the villages that are there, the extended society that exists. Reaching out to them could be one way of practicing the Gandhian values. So what I was looking at is not just talking about the Gandhian values, but I was trying to understand that how could we make Gandhian values and Gandhian principles relevant to in the context of NSS. Now, through right-mindedness and right action, one should try to develop a truthful relationship, and here relationship means unconditional service to others out of love and compassion. As student volunteers moving out and going out to the villages or to the localities, the nearby neighborhood localities, with the idea of serving people out of love, and that love is unconditional love, where you are not guided by any kind of motivation other than service, rendering service to social development, rendering service to the humanity, and with not from the perspective of me at a privileged point and the others who are whom I am going to help out or I am going to interact with as someone who is situated at the margins, but rather from the perspective of equality, from the perspective of a point whereby you are, as a volunteer, you are also looking at the individual with dignity, with respect. Now, basically, he points out that certain things need to be kept in mind when you are taking care, or you are going out to the field as social workers, or you are trying to engage in service to the people. First, he says that the values of material simplicity, that is, whatever you need, you only consume that. That is, but anyway, we have consumerism, and but then he is trying to point out that we have to live a simple life. Say, for example, you as a volunteer, you are going to a village, for example, and you are all there behaving as if looking at the dirty roads, and you are snickering at it. You look at the kind of the people, and you find that, okay, they are generating a nauseating smell, and you have a kind of a feeling that you are someone superior, or your body language kind of gives out that you are not equal to them. So that is something that one can adapt. I'm not saying that you have to be if you ask me what kind of simplicity you are talking of, then I would rather say that these kind of things that one should be very careful about, that how I conduct myself, what is my body language, how do I go and work. Then second is that non-attachment. He talks of non-stealing and trustship. Now these are the values that he talks of. Now when I come back to NSS, for example, again I come back to NSS. Now if you look at the symbol of NSS, for example, you find that there is a wheel, which is wheel of the chariot of the Sun Temple, which portrays the cycle of creation, preservation and release. It signifies the movement of life across time and space, continuity as well as change, just like we are celebrating Gandhi. Gandhi was not someone who was born 150 years back and we are celebrating him now, but we are celebrating the values, we are celebrating the man, we are celebrating his life, we are celebrating the Gandhi in all of us. And also the ideas that the ideas could give us as key takeaways or key points for us to make ourselves relevant today, or in fact make his ideas kind of guide us and be the torchbearers. Again, I was quite impressed by that lecture, the first lecture on Italian this kind of connection. Now if you look at the color of NSS, then it is the red color, which signifies young blood, the youth. They are the soldiers of change. So the students who are going to the field, they are the volunteers. You are the soldiers of change. You are the ones on whom everything depends. So it is the values that he gives, that is to be the methods that he advocates for. It is something that we are to inculcate them. Not truly, I'm saying, not fully we can do so. We cannot, because it is something, a kind of, I would say it's a process. It is, you are continuously taking in and you are changing yourself, continuously adapting yourself to you are looking at it. And the navy blue color of NSS, it signifies the cosmos, of which NSS is a tiny part ready to contribute its share for the welfare of the mankind. Just like what Gandhi says, that Gandhi talks about the unity of all lives. So respecting all, unity of all, and this is just like NSS, which is a tiny part, and we are also a tiny part of this vast universe, and that's what harmonious kind of an existence that Gandhi talks of. So, and if you look at the core values of NSS, then there is also a lot of connections that you could see, that the core values of NSS is talking about the welfare. Again, you find a connection with Gandhi. It talks about dignity. That is what I was talking about. And even Gandhi talks about that treating everybody with respect. And here respect means respecting the dignity of the individual. Doesn't mean, the individual or anything that has got life has a dignity. So it is something that needs to be, and it is very relevant today. Even if you look at, in fact, I wanted to talk about the relevance of Gandhi in today's context, but then Shukanto, it is in fact his wish was so that in fact I also started looking at that. How do I relate to Gandhi in praxis? So NSS is a very good I would say, a context for me or a point for me to understand Gandhi, because the values that it talks about and the activities that NSS advocates for actually is a kind of a field whereby you see the implementation or realization of the ideals of Gandhi in real sense. So you can see something happening in front of you in reality. Now, apart from that, it also talks about service to the poor, poorest of the poor, and that is what Gandhi says, that when you are talking, when you are trying to look at the people, serve the people, you are to look at the margin first, that is those who are the neediest, they are to be taken care of first, thereafter. So basically what NSS values espouse is something that you would also find very much a kind of a reflection in the ideas, or rather a kind of a connection with Gandhian ideas. And then the question is that how should the NSS volunteers kind of internalize or adapt the Gandhian principles when they are going? So what kind of values they should have as volunteers? So if you look at Gandhian principles, then one value that comes out very significantly is empathy. He's talking about empathy for all, not sympathy, but empathy, understanding the perspective of other, giving respect with dignity. You are understanding, but you are not sympathizing. So when you are empathizing, you are actually also respecting the other. You are offering respect to the other, and the other is not looking at himself or herself with someone who is receiving, but has a respect. So it is not a drooping eye, but it is an eye-to-eye contact. So that is very important. Second is compassion. You should have compassion. So compassion as a value needs to be cultivated. Feeling for others, sensitive to the others' issues, sensitive to the problems, to the pain of other. That is something, and not standing from your perspective and looking at it, but rather understanding the perspective of the other and standing from that perspective and understanding it. A strong sense of self, independent identity, strong personal values, courage, generosity, tolerance, the ability to perceive and forgive human weakness, imagination, and of course, most importantly, that we all lack very often, that is self-criticism. Self-criticism is something that we must try to cultivate, that always looking back and understanding. If you look at Gandhi, so in fact, if you read his autobiography, you see a very honest man who has given out everything. He could have hidden many things. He could have hidden his flaws. He could have come out as a demigod for us. He could do it, but then he was so honest. And when as an individual, what you would find is that he is also questioning himself, evaluating himself every time, and not evaluating being judgmental, but he is trying to change himself. It's not just a question of saying sorry and forgetting it, but rather he is trying to make changes, make amends, so that next time he doesn't make the same, or he is not committing the same mistake. So basically what I found was that this is another value that we could pick up. Now Gandhian, in fact, when you look at his thought, it suggests a practice informed by dignity and respect for the person, compassion, love, opportunity, and material supports. His strong faith in the goodness of people and his principle of love and non-violence is absolutely essential. The idea of Swadeshi includes as well as promotes the self-identity of those individuals in greatest need by honoring their dignity, their position, respect, equality, and love, and not from the what you would say, the volunteer's perspective, or the person or the social worker's perspective, privileged position. So the perspective, what I would say is that this perspective encourages a kind of interventions to transform an oppressive, unjust, and a violent system into a non-oppressive and a non-violent alternative. Now, in order to have peace and social justice, his ideas kind of provide a strong foundation. And in fact, he actually gives you a kind of a space for establishing a dialogue within the different parts of the society, would say, or different categories of individuals, or I would rather not talk about categories, but within the society. It would be better if we say it. And what best what best an institution could be if not the educational institution? Because education is, it has a major role to play. In fact, educators have a major role to play to introduce within their curriculum, within the practice, within their day-to-day interaction with the students, to socialize the students through these values, to these values of peace, to these values of consciousness towards the needs of others, towards oppression. And it is not just accepting everything, but being conscious about and aware about oppression and resisting it, but keeping in mind the method. The method, which is very important, which is not a kind of a, is not talking of violence, but a non-violent method, which makes a person more powerful. So Gandhi today, to me, is, as we celebrate, and from the platform of our NSS, we can look at Gandhi as a kind of beacon of light for us, and especially he is a light for us, not just in times when we are having a good time, that is in the best of our times, but also in the worst of our times, what we experience when there is a lot of oppression, or there is a lot of violence, or there is a lot of freedoms being lost. Gandhi comes out as a kind of a fresh wave of light, or a fresh offering us a fresh perspective to look into it and understand, and also offer resistance. Not being violent, but in a kind of a constructive way, in bringing changes through various organizational platforms. And so NSS could be one such platform whereby these educational institutions and the program officers and the teachers and the volunteers can in fact bring changes within themselves, as well as work towards change and establish a dialogue between the various segments, so that the NSS does not just remain confined to the colleges and confined to some students, but it goes beyond. The idea behind NSS was to introduce the feeling of social sensitivity within the students, and also to make a space for the students to render social service to their immediate surroundings, as well as be aware, and to make education meaningful. So kind of adapting Gandhi, and enlightening Gandhi within us, I think that would be the best way to remember him, and also to regenerate, and also kind of understand Gandhi and practice Gandhi in our daily lives. And thank you, Shukanto, for your invitation. So I hope I have not taken much of your time, and it has been a pleasure on my part to kind of think Gandhi and understand, and try to understand that how could we make, of course, Gandhi is relevant to us, especially if we look at our present context. He's very relevant, his ideas are very relevant, and also he gives us a kind of a space when we are trying to look for that how to address the question of dissent. How do we resist? What could be our method? Then Gandhi comes out as a very important thinker, and kind of showing light to us. And of course, NSS organizing this lecture, in fact, where NSS is interacting, NSS has these institutions within colleges have the kind of, they are lucky enough to interact with students who could be socialized and who could be trained to practice the Gandhian values, and also enlighten or kind of understand him, not just limited to research, limited to textbooks, limited to the kind of academic discussions, but to understand him as a kind of an individual whose lives and whose ideas would be still relevant and are still relevant today, and also implementing them in our activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ranjita Chakraborty, respected professor from University of North Bengal, Darjeeling, West Bengal, India. Ma'am, thank you. We are very much enlightened by your lecture, not by also all your lectures on Gandhian thoughts or Gandhi Jayanti, but I think that it's a great tribute to the NSS also, that we are doing from so many years, and our those who are the elders, those who are the baton, those who are taken the baton of NSS from the very beginning, they are the real champion, I think. And you have rightly pointed out that as Flavia Stara ma'am from Italy, she also pointed about the dignity, human dignity, and you also talk about the welfare of individual, and you have to abide by the duties first of all. So that's why you have touched all the points of Gandhian thoughts and how the Gandhi is still relevant, because Gandhi is relevant. Gandhi is not the only related with India. And I think that from your lecture, the NSS volunteers and those who are present here, they are highly benefited, all the lectures. And but you have pointed out the NSS also, because our NSS wing, they are doing this from the very beginning, from the path of Bapu. And I think there are too many questions, ma'am. Actually, the question is related to actually John Hutnak sir from Vietnam. He is answering the question, but it's my question that everyone is asking about the relevance of Gandhi in 2 or 3 words, if it's possible for you, ma'am. And one thing, that one remark from, if I find this remark, if it's possible for me, it's difficult, but I'm trying, ma'am. I'm trying, ma'am. Please be with us, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm unable to find, but if you put some emphasis on the relevance of present day. Actually, we are living in the era of social networking site. We are not doing by our norms. We are not follow the principles. So that type of things.
No, actually, every generation, every age has its own rhythm. So we are also kind of going through that rhythm, and we have to adjust to this. But the relevance of Gandhi lies, that's what I was saying, that relevance of Gandhi lies in adapting his ideas, not to look at him in the form of, say, a statue. In fact, I was going through a comment made by Professor John, that if you look at Gandhi's statues, you would see him walking. And that is very relevant comment, in the sense that he actually symbolizes movement, a dynamic thing. And if you look at our situation today, so there would be a question of tolerance. What do we learn? So of course he talks of tolerance. Then the question of how do we talk about, or if there is injustice, then shouldn't we dissent? No, he doesn't say don't dissent. He says dissent, but method. Look at the method. The method should not be violent. That is, it should not have the potential to injure others. Rather, this non-violent kind of a constructive way of resisting is something, a method that we can always adopt and adapt in our daily lives. And of course, when you look at the kind of situation, very often, in fact, a lot of memes are doing the round in social media. You would see that Gandhi and Lal Bahadur Shastri's birthday also happens to be today. So the two people are sitting in heaven, and both are not very happy with the kind of situation happening. Now, the point is, yes, things are not bad. That's why I said that Gandhi comes up, or he becomes, in fact, a rereading of Gandhi and his ideas need to be done, and we need to look at it afresh, not just during the best of our times, but also if we consider to be the worst of the times that we are going through. Everywhere we are kind of experiencing a lot of turmoils and turbulence. So even in this turbulence and turmoil, we may be able to find out and kind of connect to certain ideas or principles that Gandhi stands for or Gandhi espoused. And most importantly, that I think that especially during this pandemic situation that I have seen, is the question of dignity. Dignity of individual, compassion has become very important. It is very important. And also respect for pluralism, that I may have a different perspective, you may have a different perspective, but then it is always healthy and happy to disagree. So how do we adjust, or rather not putting everyone into one box and kind of unifying? Rather, he talks about unity of all lives, but at the same time, he talks about a point where we are respecting everybody, and there is always a space for everybody. So we are talking about the essence, and if you want to change, you want to convert, then it is through love. That is the supreme value he talks of. So that is basically we should work towards a kind of a consciousness within us that is of peace. So peace needs to be given more and more prominence, more and more importance, rather than trying to like focus on the conflict. In fact, it would be better if we could focus more on that. How do we bring in peace, and not just accepting the wrongdoings, we also resist and try to change the things that are not so good, not so happy, into something that is at least, if not changing right now, has the potential to change. It is not saying that often we mistake him that as often this is the idea that Gandhi stands for something that you accept. You are not violent, you don't resist, you don't retaliate, so you are not doing anything. No, you are doing, because you are supremely powerful when you resist against a person or against an institution, against say a condition which is very violent. So this is something that is moral courage and moral power needs to be generated within us. And I think this is the key value for today.
Thank you, ma'am, for answering this question. Actually, our next speaker, Assistant Professor from Mahatma Gandhi Central University, Dr. Ambikesh Kumar Tripathi. He has some problem. Actually, he has one program with his university campus, so that's why he is unable to join. And he gave his best wishes to our program. So that, ma'am, we have John Hutnak sir from Vietnam, and the associate professor, and we have Ganga Thapa sir also from Tribhuvan University. And we are very delighted you are with us within a long period of time. But if there is one question, you can take those question. One question is that that I have a question, ma'am, from Sanjay Mandal. The idea of Atmanirbhar Bharat, make in India, is borrowed from Gandhi's idea. What do you think?
Yes. Self-reliance is something he talks of. Of course, self-reliance is good, but then he also says that this is something that I said, that is Gandhi's words, that I would keep my windows open. I won't shut my windows. I would allow the windows to come in. I would allow the fresh air from outside to come in. But at the same time, I would not restrict, or I would not allow my roof to be blown off. So Atmanirbhar Bharat right now, I do not know in what context they have taken, or whether we can actually, it talks of self-reliance, but at a time right now, yes, self-reliance is possible, but I think it would take time. If I have understood his question correctly, he's more interested whether it is possible or not. Atmanirbhar, of course, the way Gandhi conceptualizes Swadeshi, and here, as it is said, we do not have much kind of literature on what Atmanirbhar would mean, accepting that self-reliance. Now, whether that self-reliance would mean shutting my windows to any outside influence, or would mean that there would be a kind of a healthy exchange, intellectual exchange, like say for example this webinar that we are having, where you have many speakers who are from outside, and there it is a kind of a learning experience for all of us to know what at the other end of the world people are thinking, or how they are understanding Gandhi, and also and how we understand, because we have a different reality and they are understanding Gandhi from a different reality, from a different context. So this intellectual exchange should not be stopped. This should be there. That is what Gandhi says. But then in this kind of a situation, I do not know whether Atmanirbhar Bharat, as we are talking, whether we would just shut down all the windows and doors and kind of try to develop some Atmanirbharta, or we would also say that, okay, it's happy and nice to borrow some ideas, borrow some technology from outside and develop ourselves, selves, so that we are self-reliant.
Thank you, ma'am. And there are one question actually, Poritosh. Dear Shukanto, a question to Chakraborty, ma'am. Is Gandhian philosophy being ignored in party politics of post-independent India? Actually, it's question from Poritosh Burman from Cooch Behar, Panchavan Burma University. He's my friend and he's also the assistant professor. Ma'am, will I repeat the question?
No, I've understood what you say. Yes, in the present context, in fact, when you look at the framing of the Constitution of India, you would see that very often, in fact, Austin also points out, if you have read the book, The Cornerstone of a Nation, the Indian Constitution, Cornerstone of a Nation, Austin's seminal book on the making of the Constitution of India, you would see that there was only a lone voice of Gandhi who spoke about Gandhian values when the framing of the Constitution was taking place. And in fact, if you look at even Congress, the historical documents suggest that Gandhi's influence was gradually waning as we were getting independence. His ideas were waning, and in fact, Gandhi had said in many places that people were not listening to him. So there has definitely been a kind of, it has been ignored to a great extent, and no doubt about it. No doubt, even the party that he belonged to. In fact, Gandhi didn't want Congress to fight elections. He wanted Congress to fight for independence, and once independence is achieved, then it is done, no more. But this is a kind of what I would say that yes, it has been ignored. There is no doubt about it. If you read the Constitution, you read the documents where Gandhi is not happy about the way the rights were taking place in Noakhali when India was achieving independence. He was not happy at the situation, and he also understood that people were not listening to him. So that's probably something. It's a kind of a pointer. Yes. So that's the reason probably that it is essential now to not just limit Gandhi to academic discussion and texts or webinars, but to take him to the field. And so NSS could be one interesting platform to make his principles or to kind of convert it into reality.
Ma'am, there is an interesting last question actually from Nikki Mukhi. How to keep equities our Indian culture, as we are more carried by the westernized dominating our day-to-day life. Example from khadi to jeans, from Doordarshan to BBC.
Yes. Well, this is a time for globalization. So globalization has this, that we were more interested. So say for example, how many of us, as I'm a Bengali, so I would say how many of my breed would actually watch a Bengali film and not watch a say an English film. We would rather consider ourselves elite if we can speak in English, and a person not an elite if the person has the right kind of brain but cannot speak in English, converse in English. Now, what I would say, this true to some extent, but at the same time, globalization also has a positive impact, in the sense that as we are also getting influenced by what you are saying, from khadi to jeans and from Doordarshan to BBC, yes, it is there, but at the same time I have seen, if you happen to, this is a very interesting thing that I have seen, if you happen to visit the hills in Darjeeling, for example, and you move around the lanes, you would find that Western music has a good receptivity in the hills, that even I have seen that my students, they love to listen to Western music, they love to listen to English music, they love to listen to Korean music. In fact, Korean pop culture has become very important, especially in Northeast India and in Sikkim also. In fact, in this Korean, recently, there was a competition held and in Korean pop culture, pop songs, and a Manipuri girl, she won the championship. Now that shows that it is not just one way, there is something the other way also, that someone who is singing a song which she doesn't understand the language also, but then she does it so well, she ends up becoming the champion. Now, at the same time, during festivals, you would find that they are in their traditional dresses. They live that, and they are in their traditional dresses. They are celebrating their traditional dress. They are celebrating their traditional culture, traditional food. They are listening to their songs. They are singing the songs. Now, that is something very important. So, although there may be a transformation that is from, say, khadi to jeans, or from Doordarshan to BBC, but at the same time there is a kind of an inner self which is still it is a core of our identity which is not changed. So when we would go out, for example, you just check out, you go out and maybe you consider yourself or we consider ourselves as elites or westernized, and we go out and say, for example, we go to a foreign country, we would just look around and try to find out if someone has brown skin and dark hair, if the person comes from India. If not India, somewhere around the continent, that is from Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh would do. If not that, even from Asia would do, would be my community. So this is something that is the core. What I say is, even though we have these changes, but there is something, when you see the celebration of the regional festivals and celebrations and the way the youngsters celebrate, that shows that there is a core which is still pure, which has not changed. Okay, I'd leave it at that.
Thank you, ma'am, for tirelessly answering all those queries and questions from the participants. It's a long session, and we are thankful to all of you. In the end, I want to convey my sincere thanks to my college authority and NSS RD office, NSS Kolkata regional director Shadita ma'am for her inspiration, and I am thankful to Mr. Ognimel Das, respected youth officer RDNSS Kolkata. I am thankful to our respected principal Dr. Pankaj Kumar Devnath for his endless support to me and my team, NSS team, and also I am thankful to our honorable Vice Chancellor, Cooch Behar Pancharan Burma University, Professor Dev Kumar Mukherjee, and respected Registrar Dr. Abdul Kader Safeli from Cooch Behar Pancharan Burma University, and our NSS coordinator, Cooch Behar Pancharan Burma University, Professor Amol Kumar Hor, and last but not the least, my NSS volunteers. They are the power, they are the generation to uphold the Gandhian thought to next generation. And it's my privilege that the speakers, Professor Flavia Stara, University of Macerata, Italy, and the speaker John Hutnak, Associate Professor, Ton Dak Thang University, Vietnam, and Christian Bartlol, President, Gandhian Information Center, Germany, and Professor Ranjita Chakraborty, University of North Bengal, for their enlightful speech, enlightful way out for today's world. And we are really thankful on the behalf of Cooch Behar College, NSS Unit 2, for giving us the precious time, because your time is so precious. All the speakers and the listeners, and they are very active. We will definitely provide you the feedback form. Thank you. Good night to all. And from Cooch Behar College, NSS Unit 2, we are thankful to all the lovely speakers. They are really benefited our participants, and we are also benefited by this, that on Gandhi Jayanti we can organize that type of program from Cooch Behar College, NSS Unit 2, RDNSS Kolkata for their support, and I'm thankful to Cooch Behar College. John Hutnak sir is with us. Thank you, sir. John sir, are you here? John Hutnak, Associate
Yes,
Professor.
Thank you for the invite. It's been good. Very good. We enjoy very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your precious time, sir. You are tirelessly answering all those questions in
Thank
the
you
chat box.
again. Thank you again, Dr. Gosh.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Flavia Stara, and thank you, Ganga, Professor Ganga, sir, for their valuable speech. Thank you. Thank you, all of all. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Bye. Joy, feedback form gulo diye dao. Dear participant, thank you for being with us. We will provide the feedback form and we will provide the PPT of John Hutnang, the Associate Professor Ton Dak Thang University, Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, and we will request also our Professor Flavia Stara, the University of Macerata, Italy, to give the, her PPT. And Ranjita ma'am, if she can, we will provide you in WhatsApp group. Thank you. Thank you. You are tirelessly listening for 3 hours. Thank you on behalf of Cooch Behar College. John, Joy, তুমি দিয়েছো? I will provide the feedback link. Please be with us. It's our privilege that our speakers are with us and they have given their precious time. Professor Flavia Stara, University of Macerata, Speaker John Hutnak, Associate Professor Tondang Thang University, Vietnam. We have Professor Ranjita Chakraborty, University of North Bengal. We are thankful to our college authority and all the professors for their effort to make this event grand one, and my volunteers. I will give you the thank you and the love that you have give us today. You have Joy diyecho? Actually, we have already provided the feedback link. We will give 2 minutes to the participant. Please copy the feedback link and you can send it to ours. And always in mind that you have to correctly fill out the feedback form so that we can rightly send you the certificate, because certificates are automatically generated, so that you have to be cautious about it. Joy, we can play the NSS song. Is it possible from Debayut? NSS song টা আমরা করতে পারি, কারণ আজকে NSS এর জন্য we are here.
Yes, sir.
NSS, you need to volunteer. Joy Dev, Debayut, all the volunteers, those who are here. Shanot, Saraswati, Kaushik, Uttom, Sonjeev, Shanot Devnath. They are the real heroes. Sneha De. I try to mention all the name. Shushmita. সবার নাম নেওয়ার চেষ্টা করলাম আমি। জয়, সময় লাগবে কি একটু বেশি? I'm requesting all the respected speakers, if they can share their PPT in future, they can send it to me on my email. I will provide to the all the participants, those who won this, and it's a valuable presentation from our end also. Joy.
Yes, sir.
হবে কি?
Yes, sir.
Now we are playing the NSS song. Please be with us. We will wrap up after that. Thank you all. I think all of you have already downloaded the feedback link. Please fill up the feedback link accordingly, and we'll send you the certificate. And we will take some. It will take some time. It will be auto-generated certificate. Please be with us. Don't worry about the certificate. We will definitely provide the certificate. Thank you all. Good night, and thank you all the volunteers and the Cooch Behar College NSS unit and Cooch Behar College. Thank you. We have already provided the feedback link. Someone asking for feedback link, Pratibha Garg. but we have already provided the feedback link. I think you have missed it or joined. You have to join earlier. I think it will be better. And it's right. It's a long program, but we have no choice. We have so many eminent speakers. Thank you for listening, and we are already given ample time to download the. Thank you.
Can anyone say when provide the feedback link?